Good evening, everybody. We will get the meeting started. If everyone would please take a seat. Cool. Good evening. Welcome to the September 18th meeting of the Arcata City Council. And if you'd care to, please join us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we please have a roll call? Here.
Vice Mayor Winkler.
Here.
Councilmember Ornelas.
Here.
Councilmember Pereira. Here. Councilmember Patino is absent.
Thank you. And the first order of business this evening is ceremonial matters. And we have a certificate of recognition presented to Nancy Stark for her service on the Parks and Recreation Committee. The City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes and thanks Nancy Stark for her 11 and a half years of service on the Arcata Parks and Recreation Committee. Nancy served as the chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee for nearly 7 years. As the chair and as a committee member, she brought insight and caring to guide the city's expansion of recreational programming and upgrades to many of Arcata's parks. Most recently, these included Rotary, Valley West, Greenview, Ennis, and the Arcata Ballpark, as well as the development of the futsal court at the Arcata Sports Complex. The council expresses its sincere appreciation for her guidance, support, and work to benefit our entire community. Signed today, September 18th, 2019, by myself, Brett Watson, Mayor, and we'll give you the certificate.
The council for affording me the opportunity to serve the city in this way. But I'd like to thank city staff, especially Julie Neander, Mark Andre, Heather Stevens, Dan Deemer. They work long hours to help guide the city's committees and commissions, and just really excellent staff, and the maintenance staff who do all of that work to keep our parks looking gorgeous. And my fellow committee members, some of whom have served on that committee for more than 20 years. They're just excellent people who volunteer their time. And I'd just like to encourage all residents, especially young people, to consider volunteering their time on city committees and commissions. It's just a really fun and excellent way to impact positive change in your community. So thanks so much for the opportunity to serve and for recognizing all volunteers and for making Arcata a great place to play.
Thank you so much. And next we have a certificate of recognition presented to Kristen Orth Gordinier. Am I close? All right. Kristen was appointed to the Arcata Planning Commission on January 4th, 2017. During her years of service, she posed insightful questions and thoughtful deliberations and provided an invaluable perspective from our community's next generation of leaders. Kristen was a quick study of the city's various ordinances and was able to apply her in-depth knowledge to the items before the commission. And while she was able to see and make decisions based on the big picture, Kristen was also able to ferret out details to improve the decision-making process. The City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes and thanks Kristen for her 2.5 years of service on the Arcata Planning Commission. The council expresses its sincere appreciation for her guidance, support, and work to benefit our entire community. Dated today, September 18th, signed by myself, Mayor Brett Watson. All right, next we have a proclamation recognizing September 21st, 2019 as the International Day of Peace, and I believe Councilmember Ornelas will read it. Thank you.
Proclamation recognizing September 21st, 2019 as International Day of Peace. Whereas the International Day of Peace was established by the United Nations in 1981 as an annual observance in September, and in 2001, the UN General Assembly set September 21st as an annual day of nonviolence and ceasefire. The theme for 2019 is Climate Action for Peace. And whereas the United Nations recognizes that lasting peace requires equitable economic and social development, protection of the human rights of people of all races and genders, environmental protection and climate action, and that all are critical parts of the peace process. And whereas the United Nations invites all governments, nations, and communities to renounce conflict, promote harmony, and commemorate the day through education and raising public awareness on peace, climate change, climate action, and human rights. Strengthen the culture of peaceful living by seeking to understand ourselves and others, accepting people of different cultures, countries, and religions, and celebrating our differences as part of making the world an interconnected, peaceful, and healthy place that history has shown can be done. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes September 21st, 2019 as the International Day of Peace and encourages the community to work together to create lasting peace for all people, locally and globally. Dated today, September 18th, 2019, and signed by Mayor Brett Watson and Andy Sehek.
Thank you, council members, for accepting for the 6th year in a row our proclamation for International Day of Peace. This year's theme for Peace Day is Climate Action for Peace, and it's a very simple one, right? We know very much so what harms the environment, and we as a community here and in the world struggle. So what needs to happen for our policies to finally change? Climate crisis, ecological crisis, and immigration crisis are being ignored for a long time. Can the city of Arcata be firm in cutting the single-use plastic containers, cups, and yes, straws too? We do live right next to the ocean. How can we stop plastic to be used on a daily basis when there are other options? Plastic has irreversible effect on the environment. Can we say no to single-use plastic and single-use containers now? Can we say yes to promote healthy diet with fruits and vegetables, as that is the big climate change contributor, our diet? Can we educate children about it all, about current situation, and have a mandatory subject in schools on current environment and diet and the biggest migration of our time? With everyday action, we can bring peace to us, our community, and our environment. Climate action for peace is a must, dear city officials. What stops us now to act? We cannot wait any longer, next year or next decade or 2030. The time is not on our side. Thank you so much. And Sue, do you want to?
I think we're going to do a song first, and then
Okay.
there's a whole list of things that are going on, so I'll read that after. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Come on. Most of you have heard this before. We just vary the tune, vary the verses. So.
When we make peace instead of war, when we make peace instead of war, oh how I want to be in that number, when we make peace instead of war, when refugees are welcome here, when refugees are welcome here, oh how I want to be in that number, when refugees are welcome here. When power is renewable, when power is renewable. Oh, how I want to be in that number when power is renewable. When fossil fuels stay in the ground, when fossil fuels stay in the ground. Oh, how I want to be in that number when fossil fuels stay in the ground. When we rejoin the Paris Plan, when we rejoin the Paris Plan. Oh, how I want to be in that number when we rejoin the Paris Plan. When we make peace instead of war, when we make peace instead of war. Oh, how I want to be in that number when we make peace instead of war. Thank you.
Okay, things that are going on. So on Friday, there's is the Climate Strike for Peace, and there are going to be two events, one in Arcata that starts at HSU and ends up on the plaza, either 12:31, I'm a little unclear, but approximately 1 o'clock in Arcata, there's a Climate Strike for Peace with a bunch of students of various sorts. And then at 3:30, 3 o'clock is a demonstration in Eureka, sponsored by 350 Humboldt. So both of those are Climate Strike events, which have everything to do with Climate for Peace. And then True Entertainment is handing out clothing and hygiene products. And then on Saturday, with the official International Day of Peace, there's going to be an event in Arcata that involves a peace pole tour starting at 9:30, meeting at the City of Arcata, the City Hall lawn, and going around to where the peace poles are in Arcata. And then it will be followed by Story Hour with Ms. Sue over there, whoever she went, the librarian, which will be Peace Stories. And then in the evening, starting at 5 o'clock at the gazebo in Old Town, there is an International Day of Peace celebration sponsored by Coonley and Wilf. So we hope to see you at some of them.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a proclamation recognizing September 2019 as Community Pride and Peace Month, to be read by Councilmember Pereira.
Whereas Community Pride and Peace, CPP, has a mission to inspire pride and peace in our community by putting solutions into action. Through unity and respect, our mission is to bring our communities locally and globally together to create and be the positive change we want to see in the world. And whereas CPP has partnered with other local nonprofits and businesses to create events, clean up neighborhoods, share local resources, connect various organizations to solve problems together, and to feature local leaders. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata, in recognition of Community Pride and Peace, does hereby recognize the month of September as Community Pride and Peace Month in the City of Arcata and urges the Arcata community to support these efforts. Signed today by Mayor Watson. I'd like to invite up from CPP, Ken Hammock.
We'll keep this brief. Thank you. This is the board. We're missing one, Lori Cosgrove, which she was here with us too. I'll just say a couple things and open it up if you guys want to add anything. We've shifted our focus, if you might have noticed, away from the plaza, and we're starting to really do more at Valley West now. We think there's a real need there to kind of build community. So you're going to be seeing more events and family-friendly things, cleanups, and other things there. Speaking of cleanup, we're helping Zero Waste Humboldt out and try to recruit people for the fair this weekend, the North County Fair. So on the Facebook page, Community Pride and Peace, please look up and volunteer. They're paid positions too. It's volunteer, but you can also get paid $13 an hour to cover some of the shifts to make sure that things get sorted and recycled and everything else. I think that's it. You guys want to add anything? Thank you very much.
The city really appreciates the work CPP does in the community. Thank you. Next, we have a proclamation in honor of North Coast Stand Down, October 3rd through 5th, 2019, to be read by Councilmember Winkler.
Whereas during wartime, exhausted combat soldiers can be ordered to stand down and go from the battlefield to a secure place for rest and recovery. And whereas today, a stand down is a grassroots event designed to help veterans and their families get medical, employment, social service, legal, and other types of information and assistance. And whereas the 2018 North Coast Stand Down helped hundreds of veterans get the services to which they were entitled, the 2019 North Coast Stand Down will continue to make a positive difference for local veterans and their families and will raise community awareness of the needs of returning active duty soldiers. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby honors the North Coast Stand Down organization and volunteers for addressing the needs of North Coast veterans. The Council encourages all veterans and their families in need of services to attend the 2019 North Coast Stand Down on Thursday, October 3rd through noon on Saturday, October 5th, 2019 at the Humboldt County Fairgrounds. And signed by Mayor Watson, and I will be presenting this to Ann Poole.
I just want to give you a little bit of background on the Stand Down. This is our 16th year, and we have services for all veterans and their families. They are everything from, well, as of today, we have 47 organizations that are going to do outreach. We have the Beauty College here in Eureka that volunteers and gives free haircuts and beard cuts for not only the homeless, but also any veteran that just needs a little tune-up. We have 3 meals a day. We have pet services. We have veterinarians that volunteer their time to take care of these people's dogs. We have housing, those that want to stay for the whole time with showers. And we have a full clothing house. It's the flower house out at the fairgrounds, and we turn that into a thrift store. Everything's on hangers, everything's clean, and many, many of the veterans come, throw away all their old clothes, and start for a new spring. So I encourage anybody that wants to come. If you know a veteran, many of the older veterans think, oh, there's nothing I need there. But many of the younger veterans who have recently come back need somebody to talk to who has actually walked in their shoes. And it's quite moving to see them connect and spend some time together. So I thank you. We love it. This is our 16th year, and anybody that knows a veteran, come on down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time may be limited to 2 minutes. All other oral and written communications will be heard at this meeting under agenda item 11. Can I please get a show of hands of how many members of the public like to speak during this time? 4, 5, 6. All right, I'm counting 6. So I will go ahead in generous mood. I'm going to give everybody 3 minutes. Please come on up. If you've taken a number, please go first.
Jessica, I want to first acknowledge that we are on stolen Wiyot land, and we should think about that. The police report, Ms. Deemer. We're still waiting on the police report, and still getting kind of the same answers that we've gotten in this case for Josiah Lawson for the last 2.5 years. A speaker last month said something about the cold case and was corrected. This is an ongoing case, not a cold case. 2.5 years, I think it's a cold case. You've got DNA, you've got what you need. Get it out of Humboldt County and we can get something done. I noticed when I was driving through Arcata not long ago that there was a big HSU welcoming new students, and I was curious if they were told that there is a killer and a group with him that are walking the streets, eating at Szechuan, as a girl stated last month, that she has seen out in the community. They're going to see in the community. I've got grandchildren that are children of color. They're walking around in the community. Are you telling HSU that they're not safe, that there's a killer out there, to be careful, giving pictures out maybe, or something to protect them other than just throwing a pretty party and welcoming? They could be sitting right next to these people. They could be next in line. There could be a fight somewhere and they're next. And God help them if they are, and you guys too. We need that police report. We need it last month. I just don't know what to say. We keep asking for it. Charmaine keeps asking for it. And we have no justice for David Josiah Lawson. We're not going to go away, and we're going to keep his name out there. And I don't know, I guess you guys just live with it. I did see a thing on TV where the police and HSU are putting on a thing to walk students safely to and from. Are they telling them while they're walking them safely to and from that, hey, we've got a murderer out there, we know who it is, and we're letting him walk around with you guys? I hope they make really clear that they are not safe here, whether they have someone walk them to class or not. So I just ask that you please move this case out of the county, do everything you can to move it out of the county, and get a trial going so that we get justice for Josiah.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Richard Casso. I'm quite disturbed. I learned today that on this official Day of Peace, Saturday, at the same time in the afternoon or evening, the city facilities have been let out to be used as a forum for a speaker who is notorious for traveling around the country attacking the LGBTQ community, an anti-gay speaker. His name is Stephen Broden. He's scheduled to be a public speaker at the D Street Community Center. I don't know how this happened. The facility was rented to a church for some kind of a speech, and this turns out what it is, which it does not exactly put the imprimatur of this council and of this city on these views, but it does advance the views, and it does not represent what the basis of what we in this city stand for, and it is. I feel I have to stand here in solidarity with my gay friends and the people that I live with around here. I don't think that this should have been done, and I would at least look for ways of seeing that it's vetted better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Meg Stofsky. Standing on stolen Wiyot land in solidarity with Charmaine Lawson, whose son was killed 2.5 years ago. I'm here to ask, as others have asked, why the Police Foundation report has not been received. Apparently, it hasn't been paid for because it hasn't been received. It's just unacceptable, and we're not seeing the city council and leaders of the community saying that this is unacceptable. 2.5 years, this is the same group that was able to investigate the Pulse murder, mass murders, and they can't come up with a report for the murder of a child in our care. So I'm asking the city council to insist in writing, letting us know this, that the Department of Justice to take the case away from Maggie Fleming, DA, and move this to closure. It's been a travesty what she has done. Instead of putting the person who did the murder on trial, put the son, the victim, on trial. So that's one issue. The other issue I want to speak about also, this opening the community center on the International Day of Peace and Freedom to the so-called Community Forum on Race Relations as deceptive packaging. There should have been a much in-depth look at this horrible group who unmistakably hateful in their rhetoric against the LGBTQ community. And it can't be accidental that they're doing this. They're doing this to you and us as a community. This is not a biblical solution that includes hatred of people who have a different lifestyle. It's just unfathomable to me. And I'm also going to just express, this is terrible that I have to do this, but I feel I have to do this. There's someone in the Humboldt County Board of Elections who's very high up, who is a part of sponsoring this. Her number is on the contact. I am horrified as a previous election precinct head. You need to do a better job. You may be forced to allow them to speak, but then I think the community should force you all to denounce this group, say that you have nothing to do with what they are espousing.
Thank you.
Hi. We're here today on occupied and stolen WIAT territory and wondering if maybe the city of Arcata could consider giving some of Arcata back. That would be a good step. So I'm here for 3 reasons. I want to reiterate what people have asked about whatever you can do to request the Police Foundation report. It's late by a few months, and I know that a lot of people really would like to see that. So if you could make calls and just ask them what the status is and just let us know. Also want to stand with the previous speakers about the concerns about that man, Stephen Broden. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. You can look up, if you research Southern Poverty Law Center and his name, Stephen Broden. You search those 2 things together, you'll find an article from February of this year that talks about some of the people that he goes around speaking with and their views, which are very hateful and hurtful to members of our community. So I just feel like it's really sad that this is going to happen on Saturday, and people feel like there's nothing we can do to stop it. And so I was wondering maybe the city could do some kind of public statement. You know, if you read it and you are concerned too about what he speaks about, maybe you could say something about it. I think that would be helpful. And then there's a rumor going around in the community about a young student of color who was stabbed on the first day of HSU, and I searched for it in the Lost Coast Outpost, and it says August 26, 10:58 p.m., responding party, Arcata Police Department, assault with a deadly weapon, 1400 block of G Street. The report number is 19-2356. It says, occurred at Bloxham Shell on G Street, second to University Police Department, occurred at Shell Station, victim standing by at JGC, I don't know what that means, maybe Jolly Giant, and it says stab victim. I don't know if this is true or not, but what I heard was that it's a person of color and the person who was the stabber was a white person. So maybe you guys could look into that if you haven't heard about it already and maybe make a statement about it, because it just seems like Arcata continues to be a deadly place for Black, Indigenous, people of color, and now, you know, our LGBTQIA friends and family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joanne McGarry, and I am here today for another reason later, but also because so much is being talked about right now about peace and justice in our community. And I hope you recall a few months ago I appeared before this City Council with the historic Redwood Center for Peace and Justice sign that I acquired. And I do think now, more and more than ever, we do need to really revisit the concept of peace and justice in our community and the need for a place for us to gather like they had in the past, because there's nothing more important in a community than finding peace with justice. And all these issues, people need a place to go and talk about it and figure out how to deal with it and make positive changes for the better. And one of the positive changes I would like to suggest, as we're looking at a post-McKinley statue plaza, and that the Plaza Improvement Task Force is looking at different changes in the center of our community, the concept of declaring our plaza as a peace plaza, and there are very, very few places that are called peace plazas or even peace parks in our whole world. And we could be on the map as being dedicated in the future to creating a peaceful place for us to be. And if you call it so, may it be so. So let us try and consider an Arcata Peace Plaza in our future and a Peace and Justice Center in our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the audience that would like to speak about an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Please come up.
My name is Harriet Ann Burr. I live here in Arcata. And in 2006, I was privileged to be part of the group that put together what we now call the North Coast Stand Down. And that first year, that first October, at the fairgrounds, we were expecting 30 people. Oh my God, 60 showed up. That was a long time ago. And I just want to comment to everyone present the importance of the North Coast Stand Down. What was a dream in 2006, it has grown and grown and grown. And one big thing is when we first started it, the people in Ferndale didn't want us. They tried to close it down. We don't want those horrible people here. It was only going to be about 30. And eventually somebody got the brainy idea, why don't we invite these complainers to volunteer in our organization and find out what's really going on? And that helped a lot. And to give you one example, what happened is that we met up with a gentleman, a young man, with 2 little girls. His wife was in the Army, and she got killed. And he didn't know that as a widower, he had rights. He was able to get some help for him and for his 2 little girls. He didn't know that. Nobody had ever told him anything. But the stand down was an excuse to get that information. It's very important that the whole community, we are all stakeholders in our veterans, all of us. It isn't just for the vet. It's for everybody in the community. And I would say everybody in Humboldt County and everybody in the surroundings. So on one hand, thank God you're still working, but also that by seeing the example, more people will understand that there is no peace without justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our consent calendar. All matters in the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion on any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of September 4th, 2019. B, biweekly report on general warrants. C, reappoint Gwellen Paliaga and Jim Zolik to the Energy Committee for 3-year terms expiring September 30th, 2022. Reappoint Jill McDonald and Donald Tuttle to the Historic Landmarks Committee for 3-year terms expiring September 30th, 2022. E, adopt resolution number 190-18, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata, establishing and authorizing supplemental compensation and benefits for management and confidential employees to reflect revisions and additions. Adopt resolution number 190-19, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the class and pay resolution, management, mid-management, confidential, and appointed employees to reflect a 1% salary increase effective retroactively to the pay period that includes July 1st, 2019. F, amend the construction contract for the South Jacoby Creek Wetland Enhancement and Restoration Project by $40,000 and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. G, authorize the mayor to sign a letter in support of SB 451, which would create a state tax incentive program for historic structure rehabilitation and amend the council's legislative platform to include support for historic preservation legislation. H, consider adopting resolution number 190-21, supporting a declaration of climate emergency. I, accept a donation in the amount of $796.24 from Rotary Club of Arcata Sunrise to purchase a bicycle repair station. J, authorize the city manager to enter into real property negotiations with Humboldt State University Real Estate Holdings for all or a portion of assessor's parcel number 505-251-011 adjacent to the Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary. K, adopt resolution number 190-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata approving the disposition of city-owned real property located at 250 East Street, assessor's parcel number 021-122-009. Do we have any members of the council that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
Item H.
Your microphone is off. Item H, Councilmember Winkler. Any other? Do we have any members of the public that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? May we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item H.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item H. Did you want to go first, or would you like the public?
I would suggest either having Councilmember Pereira read this since she introduced this, or Joanne McGarry read it since she has been a very strong proponent of this.
Oh, well, thank you. I would say, Joanne, if you would be willing to do it. I don't know if you have a copy of it in front of you. Yeah, I knew you'd come prepared. But yeah, I wanted to put this on the agenda. It's just really timely with the youth climate strike that's happening this Friday. You know, Sonoma County Board of Supervisors just last night also voted on this as well. So there's a lot of momentum behind this. And I know, Joanne, you've really have been a stalwart and really been advocating for this for some time. And I know that there's also a lot of people here in this community that care very much about taking this stand, and then also backing it up with the action that we've been taking and we're going to take. So I would love for you to be able to read the resolution.
Okay, I can preface reading it by saying that in my opinion, it's wonderful, and I so appreciate this resolution, but I have, like I feel about a lot of resolutions and proclamations, they're way too long. And so in the essence of time, what I was actually wanting this issue pulled for, believe it or not, was for us to consider declaring a climate emergency with the verbiage to come in a post-UN climate summit and post-climate strike reality, so that we might have better specific understanding of what we as a community and a municipality in Northern California can be for the nation and the world in terms of our emergency declaration and the action that will come from such a declaration. If that seems reasonable to you, and I so appreciate, Karen Deemer, your work on this, and it's just sometimes I think we get lost in words, and so the actions get sort of diffused because the words are so full and many, and sometimes just more simple, straightforward declaration is perhaps what I would advocate for.
So go ahead and proceed with what you would like to do. Or did you not want to read it?
Oh, I can read what I would like to do, but there's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata declaring a climate emergency and endorsing emergency mobilization efforts to restore a safe and stable climate. So the first paragraph, whereas consensus exists among the world's leading climate scientists that global warming caused by emissions of greenhouse gases, GHG, from human activities is among the most significant problems facing the world today. And I jumped down to the final whereas on the first page. Whereas addressing climate change requires an emergency mobilization on a global scale to reach zero GHG emissions across all sectors to rapidly and safely draw down excess carbon from the atmosphere and to implement measures to protect all people and species from the consequences of climate change. And whereas in developing and carrying out the emergency mobilization to address climate change, justice requires the active consultation, participation with, and benefits for communities that have historically borne the brunt of the fossil fuel extractive economy. So there's a now therefore be it resolved, the City Council of the City of Arcata does and I have just a couple of the bullet points to highlight. Hereby declare that a climate emergency threatens our city, region, state, nation, civilization, humanity, and the natural world. Hereby endorse and will support and participate in climate emergency mobilization and collaboration efforts to reverse global warming at the city, regional, state, national, and global levels to protect our residents. Then I jump down to hereby continue to educate and inform residents, businesses, and visitors on preparedness actions we can all take to address impacts of the climate emergency in the form of disasters, including droughts, wildfire, air pollution, power outages, increased risk of lowland flooding, and other climate-related disasters. Hereby support full public participation toward greenhouse gas reduction goals, including input from and participation by disenfranchised communities, and recognize that Arcata residents, community organizations, labor organizations, businesses, and schools are integral to leading this effort. And be it further resolved that the City of Arcata hereby calls on the State of California and the United States of America to initiate an emergency mobilization effort to reverse global warming, reducing greenhouse gas emissions as quickly as possible. This resolution shall be effective upon its adoption. So a little bit of editing there, and maybe post the summit, we might even have some more specific language. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that would be sort of my inclination as I've been learning more and more about what's happening coming up in the next week.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, right. I move that we adopt item H from the consent calendar.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
I have some comments I wanted to make. Just because I just getting back to what Karen wrote up for this, the city manager wrote up, and how we just stated how we want to make sure people are educated about things that are going on. This is a list of 18, but I asked Karen to put together just a list of things that we are doing, because while declaring a climate emergency is important, and particularly in feeling a solidarity with everybody, actions is what's actually going to help things. And so I'm just going to quickly run through this list of things that the City of Arcata is currently in the midst of doing to address our greenhouse gas emissions and the climate situation that we're in. So I'll just quickly run through these, because I think it's good for people to know what we are already up to. So one is we currently purchase 100% renewable electricity for city operations. We've implemented a zero waste action plan, and as some people out here know, we're still working on getting really good at that, but we've implemented a residential REACH code, which means we've reached further into the future for codes that are even better for the environment than are currently required by California state law. And we have a new all-electric initiative where we are working to develop a 15-year plan to phase out natural gas citywide. And we work with the Energy Committee and develop strategies. I'm trying to kind of shorten this a little bit. And then and I noticed there was a typo in number 5. We've planted thousands of trees. And I think this is one that I feel probably most proud about because I've helped plant some of those thousands of trees. And we are currently registered as a tree city in the United States of America. And we have the Arcata Community Forest, which in 1955 was purchased. And because those trees are bigger, and we know now in studies of redwood trees, larger trees add more volume of carbon that they sequester out of the air than even smaller trees. So we're sequestering carbon quite regularly up in the community forest. We've implemented a citywide green fleet program. We've converted city facilities to zero net energy, not all of them, but some of them. We have 3 facilities completed. We are a bicycle-friendly community. We've got a silver award, and we're still working to aim to get to that gold. And we've signed on to the Climate Protection Campaign's, we're a signature of that. We got Flood Management Project of the Year Award from the McDaniel Slough Climate Adaptation and Tidal Estuary Restoration, which is helping to buffer the bay up against the city. So that's a benefit, again, as sea level rises. We're a Cool California City Challenge participant. We have a certificate of excellence from TripAdvisor for the city's sustainable forest, which also provides a great local ecotourism. We're a Beacon Gold Level Award for 12% agency electricity savings, and that's from 2005 to 2011. We signed on to the U.S. Conference of Mayors for Climate Protection. We are a Resilient Communities for America agreement signatory also. And we've also signed on to the Cities for Climate Protection campaign member. So the City of Arcata is a member of that. So I just wanted to remind people, and I mean, we all do. Thank you. Yeah. Because, I mean, we've been working on this stuff since the 70s, really, and maybe even earlier, because people have noted, that we needed to change our life. I know that's what moved me to move to Humboldt County 40-something years ago. I knew I had to have a different focus in my life, and I think there's a lot of people here in similar kind of situations. So, well, I recognize we all have to do more, and it's getting tighter, and it's interesting. I recently was in the Los Angeles area, and I kind of felt like, I felt a little sad, really, because, nobody was thinking about not using plastic water bottles there. It's heralded because it's water. But, we just have to keep working on what we can do. And so I just wanted to make sure and leave that, and thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you, Joanne, for bringing this forward. And it will be interesting to join the students this Friday. I think the Arcata High students are coming down. They're going to be at the plaza also, aren't they? So, yeah, there'll be a big speak out this Friday talking about how we want to take more control of our environment. So, anyway, now we can get back to the motion.
Well, 25 years ago, I was working as a software engineer in Silicon Valley, and I realized that although I wasn't doing any harm, I also wasn't doing very much good. And I realized how important and how critical the situation we were in. That back in 1990, I likened climate change to nuclear war in slow motion. And I still feel that way. So I left my position in Silicon Valley, came up here and got a degree working in engineering, working on energy, and I feel it's critically important. So I've dedicated my professional life and a lot of what I've done in the City Council to trying to make us sustainable through renewable energy here in Humboldt County and throughout the state of California.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, because he's not here to speak for himself, Councilmember Winkler initially made this request as an agenda item. I'm sorry, thank you, Councilmember Bettino. Yeah. And it's just really important to me to make sure we were putting forward the best resolution possible. So I spent a lot of time talking with some of our local environmental leaders and making sure it was all lined up. And I do really appreciate the extra push to make sure this is done timely by the upcoming climate event. Next.
So wait, we haven't voted.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have old business. A, receive an update on the Old Arcata Road Improvements Project. Maybe we please have a succinct staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members, City staff, and members of the community. Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate the support on the project. Thank you. So before we start, I just wanted to give you an overview. We've been working on this project for a while, and we are at the moment at the preliminary design, and we wanted to give you an update to the council and the community. Last month, we had a public meeting, and we gave an update on the project. We received some feedback, and we thought it would be a good idea to give an update to the council as well. I think that's the reason this is here on the agenda. And we are not seeking any action on this project at this point. And also, I want to make sure that this is not a CEQA hearing on the project. So with that, I have prepared a few slides for the project. This is the same presentation with some adjustments to the PowerPoint presentation that we provided at last public meeting for the project. So what we plan to do is I will just go over the project overview. I'm sure you must have heard about the project, but I want to give you just an idea what the project limits are, a little bit history on the project, work done to date, and I'll go over the project timeline, and at the end I will take some questions from you and then from the committee if you have any questions on the project. So the project limits. So for this project, the limit starts at just south of Buttermilk, where there's a crosswalk right now. From there, it's almost approximately 1 mile paving, and roundabout at the intersection of Jacoby Creek and Old Arcata Road. All the street or whole project will be designed per complete street standard, which means it'll be paved. There'll be a adequate travel lane, bike lanes, and at least on one side there will be a walkway for pedestrians, and at least on the one side. So as I said, we've been working on this project for a long time. You can note that by driving on the road that the condition is not that great. In 2001, that first attempt was made. City of Arcata prepared the project plans and specification for the project and wanted to do a project. However, at that time, the project was not welcomed by the community because there was no public input on the project, because the project was just paving and sidewalks, and there was not enough input from the people. So after that, there was a lull moment for a while, and nothing happened. In 2014 and 15, at our TSC meeting, we received multiple complaints that Old Arcata Road is not safe. People are speeding. There are no walkways. Our walkways are not up to the standards. So in those 2 years, there were multiple complaints. So based on that, we decided we should do a project in that area. But before doing the project, we wanted to make sure we get public input. So with that in mind, we budgeted some money to do public outreach, and we called it design share it process, where we will get input from the people and we'll use that feedback to do the project. With that in mind, in early 2016, we hired, well, actually we had an RFP process where we had at least few transportation companies who applied for the job, and we ended up hiring one company, SHN Engineers and RCA, which they helped us in the public outreach process. And in that process, we had at least 3 meetings, one walkability audit, and by the end of the year, and we received a lot of good comments, and I will go over what the comments were received during that process. Actually, I could just go here. We received a lot of comments. And the main key feedback were maintain the rural character of the area, improve safety, that was big. People like and use the existing pathway. The pathway which is on the west side of the old Arcata Road is highly used, and people wanted to keep that. Desired improvements, this is based on, we got, at one point in one of the meeting attendance, we had 90 people. So we got a lot of comments through people attending the meeting, plus emails. And we also had on the website to send us an email. So we were getting a lot of feedback. So these are just a few of the key ones that we are addressing here. So desired improvements were traffic calming, pedestrian walkways. They wanted a double yellow center line. They wanted safer crosswalks. Pedestrian safety at school crossing was important. Improved signage, pavement marking for the school zone. They wanted to definitely improve the intersection of Jacoby Road and the Old Arcata Road, and they wanted most of the improvements to be bike-friendly. And in overall desire of community was, few of the individuals wanted to leave the road the way it is, and they wanted no improvements on the project. Most of them wanted to see improvements, some sort of improvements. Pedestrian and bike safety was priority. Reducing vehicle speed was desired, and it was critical, because speeding was the major complaint that we received even at the TSC. And separate path was preferred. And not only from the school, but from the people who go to the school, we had to improve parking in front of the school area. So we went through the process, and we came, after the end of the design share process, we had 4 different alternatives. And we brought that those 4 alternatives to the TSC and to the council. And we, staff recommended one of the alternatives out of the 4 based on the public input and recommendation from the transportation engineer and staff, internal city staff. They recommended one alternative, and that was chosen at one of the meeting. And with that in mind, we moved forward with the project. And right now, we are at 30% design of that project, and we wanted to give an update. So right now, we have 30% design. I'll just go through a few of the sections, how the road will look like at different areas of the alignment of the road, and then we'll focus on the roundabout, and I'll go over some of the roundabout features. So this, you are looking at the map. On my left-hand side, there's Buttermilk, and on the right-hand side, on this side, is the intersection of Jacoby and Old Arcata Road. So the first section here, right at the beginning of the project, you will see 2 10-foot travel lane, buffer on both sides for the bicycle lane, and there will be bicycle lanes on both sides. Further south, section changes a little bit. There will be two travel lanes and bike lanes, but there's no buffer. However, there is a existing bioswale ditch, and then there's a separate path which will be repaved as a part of the project. And this is in front of the school. This is how it will look like. This is just in concept. There will be bike lane, again, two travel lane, bike lane, and bioswale, and a walking pathway. And this is further south. There is an existing sidewalk on the east side. There will be a bike lane, 10-foot travel lane, 10-foot travel lane. There will be a bike lane and a sidewalk, and this is closer to the roundabout area. And as a part of the improvements, we will be doing some improvements in front of the school on Highland Street, where there's no sidewalk currently in place, but as a part of the project, we will be putting a sidewalk on the north side. And this came from public comments as well. People prefer to have a sidewalk on the one side. So there will be sidewalk, parking, travel in, and existing parking, which will remain there. So, this in concept, the roundabout looks like this at this point, and I just wanted to go over some of the items on the size of the roundabout right now. So the roundabout that we are proposing, the internal diameter of the roundabout is 110. We have multiple roundabouts in the city of Arcata. The roundabout at the intersection of Old Arcata Road and the Buttermilk is 135 internal diameter. The roundabout at the intersection of Samoa and Union is 135. The newly built roundabout at the intersection of Foster and Sunset is 85. However, that does not have any landscape feature at the center. It's fully mountable, which means that you could drive over the center, and that was needed for the truck movements. The roundabout at the Gintoli is 135. Our first roundabout in the city of Arcata, which is at the St. Louis and Spear Avenue at the Western Road, is 110, which will be the same size of this one. And the roundabout that county built in Indianola and the Old Arcata Road is 135. So this is just to give it some sense, like the size of the roundabout that we are proposing for the project. It is bike-friendly and pet-friendly. We are definitely, there are a lot of landscape features. There are lights. And then I just want to go over some of the features of the roundabout, why we are proposing roundabout. It definitely slows the speed. There are fewer conflicts as compared to a typical four-way intersection or a stop control intersection. There is reduction in collision. This is again relative to four-way intersection and signal. At the roundabout, there are reduction in collision. There are less delays because people don't have to stop. It's more efficient, and it promotes a continuous flow, and often less expensive to construct and maintain. And the reason it's less expensive, this is not in comparison to a stop control intersection, it is comparison to a signal. The reason is because if we are thinking about a roundabout, the reason is because the existing four-way stop or a three-way stop is not working, so the next step would be to install a signal or a roundabout. So the cost comparison is between installing a signal versus a roundabout. So a roundabout is way cheaper than installing a signal in a long-term maintenance as well.
Isn't there less greenhouse emissions?
Definitely.
That's what I thought also.
It's more efficient. Yeah, there's less stops. So those are on the roundabout. And as I said, I'll go over the project milestone or project schedule. As I said, we started our initial project planning and outreach in 2016, which is complete. Outreach is still in progress because we are holding meetings and workshops still at the preliminary design level. Alternate selection was done in 2017. We prepared the project report in 2018. We have started our environmental and our design in early 2018. I would say mid-2018 we started, and we are still in progress. Our goal is to finish design of all the plans and specification by early 2020 or mid-2020. and award the project at the end of the year and start the construction early 2021. I think that's our goal, and maybe, if possible, finish the construction same year if we get an efficient contractor, and if not, then we can move to next season and finish the project in 2022. The cost is always an important factor on any project. Total preliminary cost of the project, and at this point we are at the 30% level, and we have not fine-tuned the cost, but this is based on our initial concept design of roundabout and all improvements on the old Arcata Road, which is almost approximately 1 mile. Total cost is $4.1 million. We were successfully able to allocate some funding through STIP, which is in the amount of 2.4. Based on our project study report and all the design shared process, we did apply for ATP funding. However, we were not successful in acquiring the ATP funding for the project. Fortunately, we had highway improvement program. They had some money, which we just learned early this year, and we were successfully able to get that money as well. It's not secure at this point, but we got some approval from our local agency, HCOG, that we will be able to get this funding for the project. And the remainder funding will be coming from our Measure G. And out of that $4.1 million, we have already spent in initial planning / we are spending in the design process, which is we are using Measure G for those part of the project right now. And the last thing I want to go over is last month we had a workshop / meeting at Bayside Community Hall, and we heard comments on existing parking getting eliminated from the project. And so we looked into what is existing parking in that area, or that especially at the intersection of Jacoby Creek and Old Arcata Road. So nothing is striped there. Everybody parks wherever they want in some fashion. So we don't have exact number, but we try to put together something that so we can have some numbers. So currently, based on right now, we are using the parking lot in the Bayside Hall, in front of the Bayside Hall, back of the Bayside Hall, in front of the Mistwood School, post office, our lift station, and on off-street parking that people are using. So we are showing that right now there are 79 parking stalls or parking potentially, and I would just say that not all of them are legal, because you can see at the bottom, if you park that way, people will not be able to get out. But this is just for maximum parking available in the area we're looking, so we just put the number together. So right now, existing parking without the project is 79. After the project, we do some reconfiguration, and we do the parking shift around. It will not be striped again, but this is just for calculation purpose. There will be 72 parking, so there'll be a net loss of 9 parking from 7, sorry. 7. Let me see my numbers. I want to make sure. So actually, it's 79 to 70. So right now, existing is 79. After the project, there'll be 70. So there'll be loss of 9 parking stalls. However, there is an assumption is made in this case that there will be 7 parking stalls in front of Mistwood, which is not there right now, but we are assuming there will be some parking. Parking is a concern in this area. Definitely, we agree that, and we talk to the committee members, and we'll say we'll work something out, and we will work on some alternative design. We shrunk the sidewalk at least on 2 sides to keep driveway and parking. Right now, we are losing 9 parking lots. We are still refining the design, and we will keep on working on that at this point, and we'll provide maybe more feedback if you seek. But 9 lots is not significant. However, we know that there are some businesses there on the east side there. But also, there is opportunities for parking in the business area as well. So there are potential, and there are options that we could work with to keep the existing parking. So with that, thank you. This was very quick. I'm here to answer any questions you have. And also, as you know, half of the roundabout is in the county right-of-way, and we have engaged with the County Public Works Department from early on when the design process in 2016. They came to the meetings. They were in support of the project. And we have here Bob Bronco from Public Works Department, Humboldt County. If you have any questions, he may be able to give some more information for that area.
Thank you. Does the council? Okay, go ahead.
So I'm looking at that, so let's see, there's the roundabout, and then there's the post office, and then you're going up Jacoby Creek Road, and that would be like Kiki's Place or the old church. Now, and there's two long parking places right in front of that, it looks to me, like two parallel, not parallel, but say, not angled in, but straight. Do you see that? Yeah, that's like two cars there. So is it changed so that, because like now when you see it at Hot Yoga, there's like 10 cars kind of lined up directly. Yeah, so that won't be able to happen anymore. I see.
So right now they park like this, so this is perpendicular parking right now.
Mm-hmm.
At that same place. In the future, there's no perpendicular parking, however, there'll be parallel parking.
Okay.
And who owns that property where the parking spaces would be lost?
It's in the county right away, I would say. Don't have a need for the owner.
Yeah. Oh, your thing's not on, your microphone.
Oh, sorry. I do not know the name of the person who owns that property there. I could find out, though.
The property you're using is county right-of-way?
Yes, the property that right now we are using, everything is county right-of-way and the public right-of-way for additional parking if needed. Even we are using some of our lift station parking area to create more parking.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and hear from the public. If you'd like to comment on this agenda item, please come on up to the podium. And you are welcome to form a line along the wall behind the speaker if you'd like to get in line. And just to clarify, each speaker will get 3 minutes to speak. There'll be a 15-second warning, and it'll be time for the next speaker. Come on up.
My name is Gordon Angels. I'm on Highland Street in Bayside. This is beautiful. I just want to thank you. This is a masterpiece. It is beautiful. Build it. Give it to us. And I want to mention one thing. When we first had these meetings, I heard a suggestion from Susan up here that the roundabout in the middle should have daffodils in it. So that might be an idea, to add some daffodils. But it's perfect.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, excuse me. My name is Greta Montaigne. I've been involved with this project since about 2008. I started holding road safety meetings. It was at what was then the Bayside Grange. And from then, my work became working with the Safe Routes to School and helping Jacoby Creek School get a walk and roll Wednesday going. And I've received many awards from the City Council for that work, and involved around just trying to figure out how to make this section of road more safe. So I'm really pleased to see that this project is finally moving forward. This Jacoby Creek Road and Old Arcata Road is the original formal entrance to Arcata, so I would like to see the city really embrace this space and maybe think about ways to put a sign there or, welcome to Arcata. I'm not seeing the bus stop location that we were promised. I originally thought that that was going to be happening near the post office, and I'm not seeing any plans being set aside for that hopeful eventual location. I'm not seeing any parking at the wetland mitigation site farther down the road. I thought we had maybe talked about that being a possibility. I'm not seeing how the drainage is going to work. I'm also on the board of the Bayside Community Hall, and we are dealing with some drainage issues. As you know, we've been trying to get the building secured for the future, and we have a lot of water going under the building right now. There was a historical ditch behind the building stretching out into the pasture land, and that has now clogged with trees. And there's some definite problems at the main grate right there. So I'd like to see a little bit more collaboration with the county on that, where the water is going to go. There's already a lot of water coming down Jacoby Creek Road. I live farther up the road. I've lost 3 cats whenever there's an event at the Grange and the cars park all the way up Jacoby Creek Road. My cats cross the street and investigate it. Let's see. And I wanted to know where we are at with asking PG&E to possibly bury the lines, especially on the section between the school and Jacoby Creek Road. I've just spent a lot of time in that capacity as Walk and Roll Wednesday, just walking and biking, standing on the road, all kinds of weather and light conditions. So I'm really pleased to see a sidewalk going in and really clear fog lines in part of your plan, and just appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, excuse me. Hello, I'm Bob McPherson. I live along the road. I've lived there since 1969, so about 50 years now. As the engineer stated, there's a few people that would like to leave the road the way it is. I'm one of them. I see people come and go and make changes. I walk the road all the time. I think that the number one issue is speeding. So I have a simple solution. From Bayside Road to Jacoby Creek Road, make it a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, like it's done several times along the old Arcata Road going to Eureka. And that way you slow cars down 10 miles an hour without any structures. It's efficient. You guys are talking climate change and everything. That's the most efficient way. So those people that would obey the law would approach our area at 10 miles an hour slower, and then go into a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I understand everyone's concern, and a roundabout does slow people down, but so does law enforcement, enforcing our laws. So I know I'm the minority, and I lived in Bayside all my life, my adult life, and I like it the way it is, and we were the ones that argued for keep it rural. And by the way, this plan here is going to be a disaster as far as parking. You guys should come out and all visit the place when Jacoby Creek has an event. The cars go almost all the way down to the post office on both sides of the road, and they go all the way down to Henry's Crab Pot on both sides of the road. And you guys are going to eliminate most of the parking. So I just think, and again, I realize I'm a minority here, but I just think that we could save a lot of money, enforce the speed limits, and I'm not so against the walkway, but I really think we have a parking problem that no one's really addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Council and staff. I'm Kathleen Stanton and a Bayside resident, and I have 16 copies of a 2-page letter with 37 signatures on it. Could I pass that out to you folks? There we go. Thank you. This letter is from the Friends of Bayside Corners, and it was written as a collaborative effort on the part of several Bayside residents when it became clear to us this summer that the design of the roundabout would eliminate much-needed parking next to the Mistwood School. I hear tonight that we will only have 7 parking spots in front of the Mistwood School generally, when there's an event at the hall, that area has about 50 cars in it. So I really question the fact that we will only lose 9 parking spaces. Also, there's a big concern that there's a very dangerous crosswalk right here. This is a very, very, very steep or sharp blind curve. And this is the pump house right here.
Please speak into the microphone so the public can hear you.
They're proposing to put a crosswalk right in front of the pump house there on a very, very dangerous blind curve. And we would like to see that crosswalk further up the road where the road straightens out and people can see people and see cars coming. Also, we learned this summer that there's no traffic study that's been done to justify the construction of a roundabout in Bayside. At the last city meeting for the project, there were no official minutes taken for a written record of the concerns that people brought to the city about the project. Hopefully tonight, and with this letter, you will see that there is a great controversy surrounding this project and that there's a need for an EIR, an environmental impact report, as opposed to a mitigated neg deck, as the city is planning for the roundabout with a design that is only 30% completed. No roundabout was the preferred community alternative reported by the consultants in November 2017. The majority of residents did not want a roundabout, which was communicated by the majority of people at all previous meetings held on the proposed project. The majority sought the implementation of simple safety measures, such as a crosswalk and footpath north of the post office, reduced speed limits from 45 to 35 to 25, as Bob just talked about on that stretch from the Bayside cutoff to the Jacoby Creek Road. Currently, the city is preparing a mitigated neg deck for the proposed roundabout project. So why are we asking for an EIR? And that's because CEQA law requires it. Any project with this much controversy requires an EIR to look at several different alternatives, and one of them that has never been discussed is having a smaller roundabout. We have several examples of smaller roundabouts that could save a lot of parking there if we could implement it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, my name is Jude Power. I live on Highland Street. I've lived there since 1993 and have walked to the post office probably thousands of times and felt very nervous about it every time. So I'm really happy that this is finally happening. I will say, Kathleen mentioned those crosswalks, and it concerned me too when I thought about it. But this roundabout is considerably smaller than the ones at Union and Buttermilk, which I think will make them safer. And also, I see on these drawings that there's raised cement so that a person crossing would simply be crossing one lane at a time and then could halt in the middle to check and make sure. Like that crossing from the apartments over to the Sunny Bay Shopping Center at Buttermilk, only less dicey here because it's a considerably smaller roundabout. But I just want to say that I am very grateful for it. And I don't know about the parking. I don't have a lot to say, except that it looks like on this picture, they're probably going to be able to still cram a lot of cars in at Mistwood, perhaps more than what you have represented there. It's a little bit hard to translate that, but it looks like there's room for more. And also, I'm relieved that the potential problems with liability with all of the children and postal posters and other people walking up and down, I think that it's smart of our Arcata to just reduce your liability level this way. So I really like it and I appreciate it. And the parking is a problem and it's going to have to evolve over time. The hot yoga place has people parking on county property. So, the county can claim it as theirs and the people there will have to figure out perhaps someplace else those cars can park. But I do want to thank you for all of the years that you've been going through this and all of the input that you've had. And it feels like you've listened to a lot of what people have said and tried your best to address it. So nothing's perfect, but I'm very happy with this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Maggie Gaynor. I've lived in Bayside since 1978. I'm going to read from my letter as fast as I can. I'm writing to ask you to seriously consider the impact that your project to improve traffic safety on Old Arcata Road will have on the community of Bayside. This project is a tremendous opportunity for the Bayside community, one that I have waited for many, many years. As an Arcata Planning Commissioner in the early 1980s, I learned a lot from the striking juxtaposition. In Arcata, we studied and planned to ensure that Arcata's downtown core physical design would enhance safety, interaction, and a strong sense of community identity and pride. In Bayside, it's been different. The city installed a courtyard-looking pump house in the hub of historic Bayside Corners. Jacoby Creek School didn't have enough students, so it became a charter school district, and 50% of the students enrolled were transported in by car. The county widened, smoothed out, and straightened Old Arcata Road, the three conditions that most encourage speed. The county and the city both installed chain link fences in our historic downtown core, and then once the weeds filled in, it really did look like, and does today, the blighted outskirts of an urban area. Over the years, motorists speeding through, and us guys, residents walking by, have adjusted to this deterioration as if it were okay. Like so many other small towns and rural communities, this decline of Bayside's community hub is a classic story of the combined and cumulative effects of lack of coordination among government agencies and a narrow vision to help move vehicles through with no regard for the community and many, many unintended consequences. Now the city and Bayside have this opportunity to achieve both improved traffic safety and fostering interaction, walkability, and a greater sense of community for Bayside. There's no logical reason that a wonderful project like this should pit bicyclists against pedestrians, against motorists. I'm confident that we have the brain trust and the cooperative spirit, Bayside residents and city staff working together to both improve traffic safety and a stronger sense of a Bayside community hub. I'm happy to be a part of this and work with the city. I've got 30 seconds more. So I've been a part of different projects since 1978 on traffic safety. Brought in a grant proposal for grassroots organizing from Humboldt Area Foundation. There have been waves and generations of residents working on this. So I'm excited about this and want to work with you, but I hope you understand. I want a sign there that says, "Welcome to Bayside."
Thank you. Do we have any other members in the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? All right, seeing none. This will be, and just to clarify, this is your last opportunity to comment on this agenda item.
I did want to just make sure.
You can only comment once, I'm sorry.
Does County Public Works want to add anything before?
Good evening, Bob Bronkel, Deputy Director, Humboldt County Public Works. I have been working with the city in regards to this project for many years. The county has reviewed the latest set of plans. We offered some comments and suggestions back to the city, and we're looking forward to seeing the improvement plans submitted so we could issue an encroachment permit for the work to commence.
Thank you. We will bring it back to the council. Any comments or questions?
So first of all, I really appreciate all of the feedback. I know for any of these types of projects, I think it does bring a lot of folks out, and I also just do appreciate the public engagement, the outreach that happened with the city and the county and RCAA to really, I think, garner that input really early on in this process. When this came to us, the different alternatives, I was supportive of this alternative, and I do think through this process it seems to still stand out as being a good path. for us to move forward on. We're still very early in the design stage, but I think this is where we should be going. And I guess just in terms of feedback, just in terms of the parking, for me, thinking about this type of improvement and to have 79 parking spaces and have only 9 impacted, to me is actually quite an accomplishment. I think that's actually very impressive that there weren't more impacts to parking. And so for me, I just would want to make sure not to compromise. Thinking about all the different uses of the space, I wouldn't want to compromise the sidewalk space in order to make more parking per se, because I think we want to make it as easy as possible for people to use alternative modes of transportation and make it as walkable as possible. So those are just some of my thoughts on this.
Generally, I think this is a very positive proposal. Netra, let's see, quite a couple questions I have. I'll just put out both of them. One is, what are some of the criteria that are used to decide whether to do a mitigated negative declaration versus an environmental impact report? And the second one is, how feasible would it be to move the pedestrian crossing as suggested by one of the speakers?
I have Nancy or maybe Mark speak on CEQA and EIR portion. So.
Do you want to answer the other question?
Oh, on the crosswalk, you're talking about sorry, I missed that. The crosswalk right on the north side of the roundabout, is that the only question we have? Typically in a roundabout, most of the time if you see any roundabout, there are crosswalks right in the leg. So one of the reasons is, people are used to it. People anticipate while driving and people are walking. They both know where the crosswalk is. So we try to not to put in some different place. So it'll be different than other roundabouts. So we don't want that. I think that's one of the reasons. And this location that we have chosen, it has a appropriate sight distance. So person driving on the car can see the pedestrian easily from both the directions. That's the other reason.
So in regard to the CEQA question, my understanding is that the project is currently being analyzed under an initial study, and a determination as to whether to present a mitigated negative declaration or an EIR to the council has not yet been made, because until the initial study is completed, we don't know. So the mitigated negative declaration is a statement that if there are any significant impacts, they can all be mitigated to a non-significant state, and until the initial study is complete, that can't be stated definitively. Now, it may be that the staff that are working with this have an idea as to where this is going, but none of that's official. It may be that these kinds of statements have been made publicly in an informal kind of context, but again, none of that's official until the initial study is completed. Does that answer your question?
Generally, let's see. So a statement of overriding consideration is associated, I don't remember whether that's associated with an EIR or with a NAGDAC.
No, that's with an EIR, and that is if there is no ability to mitigate significant impacts to non-significant, and then the council may evaluate whether the benefits from the project outweigh the impacts, and the council may adopt the statement of overriding concerns. But let me just back up for a minute here. Even if an initial study indicates that all impacts can be mitigated to a non-significant impact or a less than significant impact, the council may or staff may advise that an EIR be prepared. There's nothing that precludes doing that extra work. It's just more expensive and very time-consuming.
Thank you.
Thanks for this presentation. So I am a little concerned about the parking, because I have, worked a lot around that region and seen how when there are events, basically people line up parking right in the bike path. So the bike path will probably be completely impacted. a few times, and even on regular days, even when that's not the only place you need to park, you'll see people parking in the bike path just even today. So that is a concern I have. And I was, you said that the roundabout was like 115 feet or something along those lines? 110 as it's designed?
110, yes.
Well, I just was thinking, you know, I go out to Blue Lake more often these days, and there's a little roundabout there at the Charton Road and Blue Lake Boulevard, and I just did a quick, looked it up on Humboldt GIS and measured it, and that's 55 feet. Now, I could be wrong. I did it really quickly right here, so I didn't carefully make sure I had my points at the right places. But I just wanted to, just to bring that to your attention, because it certainly does seem smaller than, say, the one at Buttermilk. And you said that one's maybe 15 feet bigger than this. And so that possibly, I mean, I wouldn't make the roundabout smaller and then keep the road wide, because then people will just whip around it. And I do appreciate that where that crosswalk is there, because I think if you look at how people will travel, they'll go like this, and then they'll be able to see people. It's not a blind corner anymore, as long as we don't put tall trees, maybe just daffodils, I don't know. But anyway, but maybe we could, and I don't even know if this makes sense engineering-wise, but I'm just putting it out there and trusting you to kind of think about it. You know, maybe a slightly smaller roundabout, and then the whole road's a little bit farther in with all its amenities, and then there is a little bit more parking. Because it certainly is impacted if the Bayside Community Hall or if Jacoby Creek School has any type of event, that whole region just gets, I mean, it's probably going to be anyway, because because that, you would need like a parking lot for 150 cars or something to be able to handle that. So that's probably not going to happen. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. And then I love the idea of the undergrounding. I hadn't heard about that, and I don't know if we have any information on that. That would be great to kind of continually, as we tear streets up, I always wish we could just do the undergrounding then, but I don't know if that's possible fiscally. And then, the bus stop. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the bus stop, because I think we were talking about a bus stop. Old Arcata Road was going to have a bus route, and then I believe that got kind of, pardon this pun in a sense, but shuttled off to, the side, and now it's kind of an on-call vehicle, picks people up if they need a route. So I can see the interest in a bus stop at some future time, possibly. I think they determined that right now there just isn't really enough user demand to have a regular route there. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, but anyway.
Okay, I'll try to answer most of them. Charton Road. Charton Road is 100 feet inside diameter. And we did look into a smaller roundabout for this project, a little bit smaller than this one. However, smaller roundabout will, because the way it will be laid out and because of design, it will require to encroach more on the mistwood. You know, it doesn't make sense, but that's how the design worked out, and we had to, if we went up with that design, we had to acquire a piece of property from the mistwood. And on a federal project, acquiring a property from a private owner or even from a school is adding at least, I would say, 3 years to the project before even you can move forward. So that's one of the reasons we eliminated smaller roundabout, or the shorter version of this one. And that would have not added additional parking in any ways, because in a parking you need at least 20 feet. It will not make a big impact for parking. Other one was bus stop. Yes, the roundabout is designed in such a fashion that HTA bus will be able to go through it. And currently, the potential location that we have discussed, it's not shown on the plan, because we have not got a confirmation that this is the location from HTA, because bus will be mostly, it'll be an HTA bus stop. So the location, we have space, which will be right on north of the lift station. I'm so sorry, I don't have a pointer, but where you see the stop sign right north of the lift station, the entry point, just north of that, there isn't a PG&E box, but there is an open space and a right-of-way where we could potentially, in future, there could be a location for a bus stop. Undergrounding, yes, definitely. It came up multiple times, and during public meeting, and we did think about it, and it's a perfect time to do it. We definitely agree on that. However, we did meet with PG&E, and we even started the project for the Bayside area underground district. We were at that limit. However, and also county supported that undergrounding, and they even said they will allow us to use their Rule 20A money for undergrounding district, and which was great. However, the cost, that number we got from PG&E did not support the project. It was very, very expensive to underground everything. It's not only the structures on the street, however, all the residents along the road and the backside, they have to be undergrounded, and undergrounded with new meter and everything. So that added a lot of money to the project, and we don't have enough money to do that project. Did I answer all of your question? Okay. And I have some notes, and I can respond on some of the items. For example, landscape, yes, definitely, it came during the meeting, so that's the one reason we have a landscape shown around the roundabout area. Welcome sign, yes, it came up at multiple meetings, and we definitely, we don't have a design right now because we are at the preliminary level, and we want to get input from people to get what kind of sign we want and where. So there is still opportunity to install signs wherever we want, welcome to Bayside, or whatever we want to be on that sign. There is time and there is a room we can do that. Drainage improvements. Yes, we will be doing drainage improvements as a part of the project. We are in the design level. We have got information from the county on their existing structures, and we will be providing adequate drainage structures so that project will not create additional flooding because of the project, so it will be minimized, or there will be an underground storm drain structure in the project. It doesn't show up here, but there are on our plans. It shows where the existing structures are. I believe those are the only questions I could have answered right now. On the environmental side, Nancy answered most of the questions, and if you have additional questions, we can answer those. Thank you.
So I want to disclose, there's no more public comment, I'm sorry, sir. I want to disclose that I did meet with Kathleen Stanton and Maggie Gaynor about 2 weeks ago at the location and listened to their concerns and looked at some maps with them. And then I did talk with Natra and our city manager and did pass those along, all of which have been mentioned this evening. Could you clarify the traffic study? I know you said that there was something that had been done.
So the project is not generating additional traffic. Because, when you do a big traffic study or a traffic study for a project, when there's a bigger project and they're going to add additional trips to the project. This project is not going to add additional trips to the project. So a full traffic study was not done for the project. However, there was a traffic memo prepared by Omni and Mains, who are qualified traffic engineers. And they looked into the intersections and the project, collision history in the area, average daily traffic, and they did provide a memo. It was in memo format, traffic memo, I call it, for the project.
Thank you. And in your opinion, what's the likelihood of, 20, 50 years, the 101 getting pushed to Old Arcata Road?
Well, it is in our, I would say, local regional planning. Old Arcata Road is an alternative route to 101. I don't know what time that will happen, but even if there is an accident or something on 101, the alternative route is this to go across. So the road will be designed. That's one of the reasons, the sections of the roads are heavy to accommodate that for future. Sorry, I don't have a number for when
no, that's good.
sea level rise will be gone. So.
I just want to clarify that, yeah, there is some thinking going into this that road may, if it's because there's an accident or sea level rise, may be the 101 in the future.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it will be 101, but definitely it's designed for that, and it is an alternative route to 101.
Let's just imagine the pump house wasn't there. Would that help you with the design to still allow for parking, but have the roundabout?
If the pump station, you're talking about our pump station, was not there, I believe we will still, at this point, if you ask me this question, I would say yes, still we will go with the roundabout, even if the pump station was not there. I
Sure,
don't think
but would it allow you to reposition the roundabout and not impact the parking as much on the county side?
potentially. I have to see the layout because, as I said earlier, because we did try the smaller roundabout, but that created more impact on the other side. So we can look into that. My gut feelings tells me that if the pump station was not there, maybe we could have shifted a bit, but not a lot, because the encroaching point is on the private property, and we do not want to encroach on the private side because we have to buy a property from them for the project, and we try to minimize that if possible on the projects.
And is that sewage pump?
Yes, that is a sewage pump.
So you need a sewage pump somewhere there?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's a great idea. All right, and so this roundabout is because of the volume of traffic and of vehicles, cars and trucks.
And the speed. It's
Okay,
the speed,
yeah.
basically.
And so, there's a reason why we're building more vehicle infrastructure here, and that's because, we don't have sufficient bus service. I think a lot of people in the city center would not be open to biking to this area. So it does seem like to access this area, 9 out of 10 times a vehicle is required. So to me, it does make sense to do what we can to preserve, whatever parking we can. And I also feel like the community hall is, a very special venue to many people, in the entire county. So I would like to see us, make sure we're doing what we can to not detract from their ability to hold events. So those are all my comments. Do we have any other questions or comments from the council? And so at this time, you're not asking for anything. This is just an update on what's going on. And if you said it already, could you reiterate what the future opportunities would be for the community to weigh in?
If the community wants to provide feedback, anytime, they can send an email to me or call me and provide the feedback or input on the project. But at some point, we will be at the level where we will not be able to make many changes. Right now, we are at 30% design, so we can make minor adjustments. We cannot change the complete project, definitely, but we can make adjustments here and there to accommodate some of the stuff. But once we are, in few months, we will be at 50%, then 60%, and we will be at 90%. Once we are, by early 2020, we are 90% level, it will be complicated to make big changes on the project. So, if the community wants to provide input, I would say, by the end of maybe November, if there are major changes on the project, then we would like to hear, and then they can always call me if they have some beneficial input on the project.
Thank you very much. Of course. We are going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, are we good? We will go ahead and get the meeting started again. If members of the public would please take a seat. I'm gonna bang the gavel. Thank you. This is the first time I've used the gavel in my entire mayorship, and I used it twice in one night. Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so next we have old business item B, provide direction regarding the mobile home exclusive combining zone. May we please have a staff report?
Good evening, Council. This item's before you tonight so that staff and the Planning Commission can receive direction as to the mobile home overlay zone that we had discussed in May. As you recall, the Council directed staff to develop a mobile home exclusive overlay zone and introduced a moratorium on conversion or change of use of mobile home parks in May in order to give staff the time to develop both the closure and conversion ordinance and bring that back for Council's review, as well as the mobile home exclusive overlay zoning. And so we did bring that to the Planning Commission on September 10th. The draft zoning ordinance is in your packet, attachment A. And I'll tell you a little bit about what that ordinance, that proposed ordinance would do in a bit. But when the Planning Commission reviewed it, it received public comment, some of which you've received again tonight. And I also included the written public comment that the Planning Commission received as attachment B. And in sum, basically, the public comment had two main points, two high-level points. One was the existing proposed ordinance does not include the Arcata Trailer Court as one of the properties that would be protected by this overlay zone. And there was concern about that. And the second main issue that was raised was that the city should consider adopting a senior mobile home overlay zone as well, or in addition to, or in conjunction with. And so those two issues were discussed by the Planning Commission. The Commission was interested in why the Arcata Trailer Court was not included as a staff recommendation. And in short, the park is right on the Gateway Corridor. It's likely to be included in the upcoming planning associated with the redevelopment of that corridor. And in staff's opinion, there's a higher and better use for the property in terms of higher density housing on that site in the core downtown. The Planning Commission wanted to evaluate that. They wanted to know more about what the proposal was for that site. They wanted to know more about what relocation would look like for that site. They were interested in the replacement housing component of the existing or the proposed ordinance. And much of this detail and data that they were requesting that staff provide to them is going to take several months to develop, if not a couple of years. I mean, we're not anticipating being done with the Arcata Gateway specific area plan where more detailed information about what the specific zoning on the Arcata Trailer Court would be until the beginning of 2021. And so I left the meeting with direction from the Planning Commission to basically go out and do some more research and come back to us when you've resolved on all of these issues, and you can report back to us. And I felt like I had direction from the council at a prior meeting to get us an ordinance on the books as rapidly as possible. So really, at the heart of what tonight's item is, what I'm asking for is direction to clarify this potential contradiction in direction that I have right now from the City Council and the Planning Commission. The points that were raised at the Planning Commission were, very valid points. I think that the, Planning Commission in effect initiated a code amendment to adopt senior mobile home park overlay zoning, which is allowed for by our code. The Planning Commission or the City Council either one may initiate a code change. And at the time, I tried to provide an alternative, pathway for the Planning Commission to go ahead and initiate that code change, but still take the City Council's direction, as I understood it, to put forward this mobile home overlay zone as rapidly as possible. And at the end of the day, though those arguments may need to be, investigated in further detail, we didn't come back with a time frame for that, or the item wasn't continued to a date certain. And so right now I find myself in a situation where I'd actually, in order to try and facilitate the council's direction, I noticed hearing for your next hearing to introduce the ordinance, and we find ourselves at this point having to backtrack on that. So depending on the outcome of tonight's direction, I'll provide you with a couple of options on what to do with that upcoming meeting. But I really do want you to hear directly from several of the folks that came and spoke to the Planning Commission or here tonight. Then I'm sure be able to articulate their concerns a lot better than I could, and I don't want to speak for them. So at this point, I guess staff doesn't really have a recommendation. We just need to seek direction. Should we adopt a mobile home overlay specific for seniors? If so, do you want to link that to the current effort to just have a general overlay zone for mobile home parks? And then any kind of guidance that you want to give to the Planning Commission and to staff regarding the proposed uses for the Arcata Trailer Court and whether to include that in this overlay zoning or not. I do want to emphasize that this ordinance does not change the use of the Arcata Trailer Court. There's no proposal on the books right now to close any of the mobile home parks. And these are really preemptive actions that we're taking here to ensure that, now that we're working on mobile home rent stabilization and the closure and conversion ordinance and these issues, that the council felt it was important to take these preemptive steps. So I believe City Manager has something to say, but that's the end of my staff report.
Yeah, and we could vet this further if the council is interested, but Community Development Director Lori and I talked through sort of the options associated after the Planning Commission direction, and then conferred with the mayor as well and decided to bring this agenda item before you. I mean, your city manager's recommendation and direction to the Community Development Director would have been to return to the Planning Commission and ask them to take action on the initial request from the City Council, and then bring that item back to you for full ratification, as well as consideration of, potentially adding a senior mobile home park overlay zone if that was in the council's interest. And then looking further, ultimately the decision as to whether or not to put the Arcata Trailer Court in or out would have still come to the council, and the Planning Commission could certainly make a recommendation on that as well to you. But to be, I guess, sort of candid, I am concerned about other work within the Community Development Department slipping in terms of timelines, and would be asking them to refocus on some of the other projects in terms of the council's goals for at least this fiscal year before we start. I mean, I understand initially I thought, well, is it easy enough just to put the word senior in front of the work that you've done? But quite honestly, we do need to do some research as, the sort of the legalities and the nuances around creating an age-restricted zoning in Arcata. That is going to take time, not only from community development staff, but our city attorney. And I'm absolutely happy to do that. And if the council's direction is to do that first and foremost, we're happy to do that as well. But looking at the workload right now for that department, I do believe that based on the direction we received through the budget process, there are some other things that the department should be working on first, not to say they shouldn't be working on this eventually.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? And this will be the only opportunity this evening to comment on this agenda item.
Hello, my name is Linda Dirksen. My husband Jan and I live at the Arcata Lazy J Ranch Senior Mobile Home Park. I'd like to address a topic of the relocation of the 27 Arcata Trailer Court households if the city adopts a draft ordinance that the staff presented at the Planning Commission meeting last week and here tonight. The Santa Cruz County Closure Conversion Ordinance has two provisions to protect displaced households in case of a park conversion. Quote, approval of a mobile home park conversion requires that 1, sufficient mobile home space availability exists within the county of Santa Cruz to accommodate the mobile homes displaced by the conversion. 2, conversion will not result in the displacement of low-income individuals or households who cannot afford rents charged in other parks. End quote. I'd also like to address a topic of affordable housing loss in case of a park conversion. Attorney William Constantine gave advice about how to preserve affordable housing in case of a park conversion. Quote, the mobile home park conversion must be rejected if it contains low or moderate income housing that will be eliminated unless that lost housing is replaced with similarly affordable housing. A park owner can be required to provide this replacement housing unless they demonstrate that their park cannot continue to operate as a rental park and still make a fair return. In such a case, the park owners have to be permitted to go out of business without being required to replace the lost affordable housing, end quote. As you know, Arcata's draft Closure Conversion Ordinance does not include the relocation protections that Constantine advises and that are included in the Santa Cruz County Ordinance. So we ask you, please make sure that Arcata's Closure Conversion Ordinance includes the rehousing protections that are in the Santa Cruz County Ordinance and that adhere to Constantine's advice. You can see from our request that Arcata's draft Closure Conversion Ordinance is closely intertwined with the draft Mobile Home Park Exclusive Zone Ordinance that you have on your agenda tonight and that was covered at the last Planning Commission meeting. So it's imperative that the two ordinances be considered together, first by the Planning Commission, and then it comes to you for final adoption. Finally, we ask you to please include the Arcata Trailer Court in the Mobile Home Park Exclusive Zone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Lynn Matthews from the Lazy J. This is just addressing not the senior, but my experience at the meeting on the 10th. Confusion at this point in time is apparent in the process. It's changed. Our vulnerable neighbors at the Arcata Trailer Court are left out. My trust level is diminished by the staff's comments at the Planning Commission meeting. Comments such as being on the hook, describing 15% versus the 100% provided for coastal individuals that are being displaced was disconcerting. Also, the description given of the Arcata Trailer Court at the Planning Commission I found to be inaccurate and prejudiced. Citing Google, the reviews, and my own experience of the ATC, they have 4-star ratings, multiple descriptions of cleanliness, quietness. It's non-problematic to the police department, the Arcata Trailer Court. There's minimal residential turnover. It's a stable community. I can see where driving by and its location for redevelopment where you'd want to utilize. I can see both sides of that picture. However, it seems that knowing the plans of the ATZ is pertinent to the discussion. The staff's proposing that you displace 27 households from their homes for a future high use of the property, so to allow the ATZ to be converted to some future unknown high use, and with the consequence of removing 27 households from their homes without any idea of what you're going to do with that high use, what it might be, casting 27 people onto the streets that are going to be homeless, penniless, with minimal support systems that appear to be in place, that no one seems to know what's going to happen. I find that appalling myself. The 5-year condo plan was listed as a descriptive idea of what might happen, giving to the Planning Commission, and a quote in that was, in 5 years, when those condos were built, people who were displaced in 5 years, they've already found new homes. And what was being said is, why should we provide housing for them? Replacement costs above 15%, that should be good enough. I do want to use this time to thank your planning commission was incredible for being so caring, supportive, and inclusive of all individuals in the community, regardless of their socioeconomic status. They were really supportive. They appeared concerned with everybody. The availability of rehousing for financial compensation, low-cost mobile home parks, they were very special, great group. Thank you for your time and consideration in this subject.
Thank you.
Mary Ella Anderson, Lazy J. I just want to make 2 points. The reason we would like to keep the Lazy J a senior park is because although some of us thought we'd never wind up in a senior park, we find it's a very wonderful place to be. It's a real community of people who have, we're all about, in the same point in our lives, and it's very comfortable, it feels very safe, it feels very supportive because we are a community. And as for, I think it's just a little cold-hearted to say that the 27 people who are living in the Arcata Trailer Park will find somewhere else to go when we already know that there's a terrible housing shortage. They are very low income. They're very unlikely to find another house, and they are going to wind up on the street. So you're defeating your own housing plan by creating more homeless in doing this. Maybe you could do that after you had found them a place. First, you need to find housing for them if you want to put that property to other use. You can't just do that and throw them out. That's just not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
Good evening. I'm Hillary Mosier. I'm the regional manager for the Golden State Manufactured Homeowners League in this zone. And I'm here today to talk about, I want to point out to the City Council how very fortunate this community is to have Jan and Linda Dirksen advising this important process of protecting this valuable low-income housing in Arcata mobile home parks. They've written you a letter dated September 17th that goes into great detail about all of these issues. Jan and Linda spend hours and hours of their time researching, outreaching, and writing to assure that Arcata's general plan protections and city ordinances always are representative of the best practices across the state. Their advanced degrees assure that their input to the city is scholarly and reliable. I cannot stress enough how rare it is for a community to have such dedicated and skilled volunteers to guide a process fraught with nuances and details. They have done the homework for city staff and council members alike. Please, please follow their direction. their well-reasoned best practice guidelines and requests for these housing elements and ordinances they have submitted for your consideration tonight. The situation regarding the Arcata Trailer Court is hard to understand. So city staff has said we're going to go ahead and offer protection for all other parks except this one, because we've decided it's mostly RVs, is what they presented to the Planning Commission. And that, I've been there, I've interviewed those people, I've spoken with them and asked them, what is their situation, what do they want? It's like every other person living in a mobile home park in Arcata. There's virtually no difference. They deserve these protections as much as any other mobile home park in the city of Arcata. And to say that for some reason they don't, it does seem, it's kind of shocking to me too. And I urge you to consider what Jan and Linda have written up for you. Thank you.
Do we have any other members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? This will be your last opportunity to comment on this item.
I'm Linda Medoff. I live at the Lazy J. Just a few points. I concede that the whole issue of the Arcata Trailer Court is intertwined with the whole Gateway project. And my question is, what is the Gateway project? What is behind the recommendation of staff to exclude it? The specifics of whatever plans that they, even their sort of pie in the sky plans for this higher density housing on that. And I would use the phrase that Karen Deemer used in discussion of the previous project for our Old Arcata Road. Do the benefits outweigh the impacts? And I think that's key. It would seem that even something like an RIR would be appropriate even to consider things at this point. At this point, the closure conversion ordinance has gotten sort of sidetracked and intertwined with the whole issue of this other of the overlay zone, which is a general greater protection. But my concern is if the closure conversion, it is imperfect in terms of the optimum benefits. But if there were a closure conversion in effect now, at least the people in the Arcata Trailer Court would have much greater protection and compensation than they will get, because if this is such an involved process and it goes on for such a long time, they are the people who are most at risk of a conversion closure, and they will be without really much, not only compensation, but much to do about it. I'd like to just point out that most cities, you can do the research. In the past, I did a lot of research on this. They have separate senior and general mobile home park overlay zones as part of their zoning code. They're separate items. And I hope that you will not make it a low priority to deal with the senior overlay zone, because that is an issue that the owners can just deal with, and that is a way that can really lose a lot of affordable housing from bringing in families and keep raising the rates through vacancy and other things. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we will bring it back to the council. I just had one quick question. Do we own the Arcata Trailer Court?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I guess just before there's a lot of discussion, I did want to just on a timing, it is anticipated that we will be bringing back the mobile home closure and conversion ordinance as well. And just to be clear, the trailer court will still be covered under the closure and conversion ordinance. The staff suggestion was just to not include it in the zoning overlay at this time till we, at least got through these planning processes. And we certainly have no anticipation of just eliminating housing and not being considerate of, the impacts of that as we move through those processes, if anything ever changes on that site.
Well, I think the issues that the homeowners from Lazy J bring up are very valid in terms of the needing the senior overlay and including the Arcata trailer court in the protections. But I think that I would trust City Manager Deemer that the department is very heavily loaded, and I don't see an immediate threat, even though I think that the homeowners do see an immediate threat. And so I think I trust City Manager Deemer and Community Development Director Loya to set priorities on, it's not that this is not going to be done, but I think that I trust them in, this can't be the only thing, this can't necessarily be the highest priority thing, but I do support the changes that the mobile homeowners want, and I think those are valid.
So let me get this. You are asking us to kind of respond to your 3 questions to help give you guidance working with the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right now, the Planning Commission has given me direction to essentially come back at some future date when all of these issues are resolved that were brought up tonight, and when all the concerns and considerations that the Planning Commission had during their deliberations, that I've had time to investigate those. Which to me seemed contrary to the council's direction to bring back an ordinance as quickly as possible. And so really the question is, assuming that you want to go forward with some of these other, issues, the senior mobile home overlay zone and that sort of thing, the concept was to bring back a mobile home overlay zone and a closure and conversion ordinance that the council could adopt simultaneously sometime within this 24-month period that we have the moratorium. I have the first 2 components that the council asked us to bring back ready for you, and I need to resolve that outstanding question. Should I take the Planning Commission's direction and come back to them at some point, within this 24-month period? Or should we follow the original direction of the council and get that first work done first and then, put this on the docket, the senior mobile home overlay zone? Certainly, I think the commission is interested in any kind of input on the Arcata trailer court. But at the end of the day, their recommendation to the council, I feel like that is largely a policy decision, and it's not a land use decision, and that the council will be able to weigh in on that most appropriately as a policy matter. Certainly, I'm not at liberty to discuss what the relocation benefits might look like for residents at the Arcata Trailer Court at some future date and time. But we do have a history of having, done relocation with upgrades to different projects in the past, even a mobile home park with the Sandpiper. And so I'd anticipate that whatever the plan is that's ultimately developed would include potentially a more robust relocation benefit or a partnering of some sort with the city if the Arcata Trailer Court was closed. I don't have those details now. Right now I'm trying to address the task that the council gave me in May, adopt exclusive overlay zone and a closure and conversion ordinance.
Okay, so for me, responding to the questions that you've kind of asked us, I would say, yeah, I think that staff should work on the overlay zone first. I do support the senior overlay, particularly for the Lazy J. That seems like a good idea, but that does seem to me that it can be secondary, because that's not, as we're working through our workload. So moving the overlay zone forward, I would say is the first thing. I do have a little bit of just, and I watched the Planning Commission meeting today, and I realized it was a little bit of a frustrating meeting to watch because it kind of felt circular in a sense. But the 15% of the replacement, I don't want to get too caught up in that because that did seem to happen at the Planning Commission, but it does strike you as like that's pretty low, and so I suppose, are we recommending that you are going to take this combining zone back to the Planning Commission with kind of the thought of what order you should do things in? Is that kind of what we're working on here?
That is the idea, and I want to point out that the replacement housing requirement in this draft ordinance as attachment A is a condition that's above and beyond what's required for a zone change in the first place. It's above and beyond what's required in our closure and conversion ordinance, and it's above and beyond what the requirements would be for any project that had public involvement, if there were, tax credits or,
Right.
Any of those kinds of funding sources in it.
That kind of
and the
leads.
reason why
oh.
15% was selected was because that's the traditional inclusionary zoning standard, 15 or 20%.
Okay, and that's helping me to kind of understand why there was confusion at the Planning Commission, because there are so many things we're talking about that are a little bit vague and they're not in front of us, so we don't quite know the effect of all those things as we're looking at this. Mm-hmm. So thank you for clarifying some of those. So I would say with this that I would recommend that you keep working towards moving the overlay zoning of the mobile park combining zone, moving that forward, and then do some research into the senior element of adding that as an overlay zone. Particularly, I would focus on Lazy J. And at first I wasn't so excited about that because I thought, is it really the best idea to have seniors isolated and kids, separate somewhere? And I suppose that's a debate that could go on and on forever. But it seems like you guys are interested in it. It seems to be something that goes on. So I'm willing to do that. And it is a happy community, being a senior community, so I'm willing to go with that. So let's see, the second question, should it be delayed and linked with the senior? I don't think we should link them at this point. I think you should continue working what you're doing. But yes, we should keep working on that, on the senior element. And then, let me see, the third question was, should adoption of the mobile home park be contingent on completing analysis around potential land regulations? So that's the Arcata Trailer Court issue. I understand why the staff is leaving Arcata Trailer Court out of this, because it isn't in an area, and really the city council, we've only vaguely gotten ideas of what the gateway is going to be. I think that's working through staff more, and we've given some ideas of what we think it is, but we haven't seen any details. Certainly having consideration for the people there should be done then. I mean, right now there isn't any conversion suggested or in plans, and we have our moratorium for 24 months or 21 months left or something. So I think we're okay with that. But I would like to make sure that as we move forward and potentially that does become 3 or 4 story building, and maybe it is even low income housing, or maybe it's middle income, or maybe it's a variety of, we don't know what it's going to be yet, but that's the thought. The higher and best use is that what we're trying to do is have more concentrated development downtown, so that maybe even potentially we could have a walking plaza. I mean, this is an idea that people keep bringing to us, but we don't have the people here. We don't have the masses of people to be able to have a successfully economic walkable plaza. Currently, we need people to come in from outer areas to support our businesses. So if we ever want to get there, we do have to have a more concentrated housing, more downtown. And so that's a goal, and we're trying to do that with taste and with beauty and with safety and, all those thoughts. So I agree that we shouldn't include that in our overlay zone now, but we should, I think, the sentiment is of this council and also of the Planning Commission that we would want to work with those people. We wouldn't want to just leave them out and just kick them out and now we have new condos or something. I mean, that's not our goal at all. So that's an extreme way of saying what we're talking about here, I think, because I think we're just not quite ready to lay out the details of it because we haven't worked out details yet. So that's pretty much my response to your questions. I don't think I had any other ones. Maybe, I did have one question. What is the RIR? I didn't know what that was.
The RIR
Yeah.
is it's the report that has to be done in the closure and conversion ordinance that documents the impact on the residents, basically.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And so that would be done for the Arcata Trailer Court once the closure and conversion ordinance is adopted by the council. If, again, we ever got to that point.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to share a few thoughts. I think one of the first things, I think with the Gateway Corridor, I think to really clarify that that's going to be a community process. I mean, that's something that, I mean, we're getting funding to be able to, you know, go out into the community, into that neighborhood and beyond, and really to get feedback on what we want that area to look like. So staff, of course, are going to be the leads on that, but they're not the deciding factor on that. It's really going to be a community-driven process. So I think it's just helpful to clarify that this isn't just, you know, something that's being done at a staff level. It's really about getting that community input. So I just wanted to clarify that piece. And I do agree a lot with what Councilmember Ornelas stated. I think recognizing that we do want to move forward with an overlay zone as soon as possible. I have mixed feelings about, you know, doing senior exclusive. Hearing the advantages was very helpful to hear tonight. So I'm not coming from a place of opposition to it, but rather wanting to just make sure that we move forward with the overlay zone period, and that at a later point, you know, that can be a secondary conversation, but I think we just, I don't want it to delay the overlay zone to begin with. So that's just really my biggest concern. And also, you know, our city manager, you know, did give some context about the work that, you know, community development does. There are lots of different projects, and I think oftentimes with all of the work that the city does, and when we have proposals that come to us, I don't think we talk enough about the reality of working with limited resources and how that does, you know, impact, you know, what we can prioritize year by year. So I think this has been a priority for this city council for several years, because it's something we need to address. And I think being able to triage and recognize, like, what are the things that we can continue to prioritize so that we are meeting the immediate needs and the long-term needs of doing an overlay zone. I think that's really critical, but also recognizing if there is more intensive research that needs to be done for a senior exclusive, you know, that's not at the expense of other really critical, you know, affordable housing projects and other work that needs to be done. So I don't see this as, anyways, I appreciate giving that context. I think oftentimes we don't talk enough about that reality. But I think the overlay zone is important to move forward. And then, I mean, in terms of the exclusion of, you know, the Arcata trailer court, that's something that I felt very conflicted about. Hearing the testimony today, of course, was incredibly helpful to hear those perspectives. But I also do think that it does need to be a part of that larger planning process that we need to have. And I think whatever we do for, you know, any type of, if it were to ever get to a point where there's relocation, I think we just need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to make that a smooth and fair process. And I mean, in terms of the 15%, I mean, there is a part of me that thinks that maybe we should, if we're talking about that site in particular, looking at a different percentage that might be larger, I think, to better reflect the level of affordable housing that is there on that site. And so instead of doing 15% of, so my understanding in reading that is that it's 15% of, you know, the existing units, or it would, for a new project.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's above and beyond the relocation that would be required in the closure and conversion.
Yeah, but I think if there's any way that I don't know if there's precedent for this, but if we can increase it to a place where it's really recognizing the current levels of affordable housing on that site and making sure that a new project is really reflecting that, that amount of housing, so that we're not losing that, even by, because it could be a percentage where it's still less than the 27 units, for example. So that would just be something I would want to entertain.
And I just had one more little thing I wanted to add. If I understood the Planning Commission meeting correct, we were talking about maybe not having a map and instead having a list of the AP numbers and referencing what the exhibit was. And I thought I heard that said, and my initial response to that was, no, maps are really helpful. I like maps. They help me see where everything is. And I think they're even really helpful in time. like 20 years from now or 50 years from now, to be able to see what was there at the time and what we were talking about. So I'm not sure if I got that correct, that you were thinking about getting rid of the map, but I just wanted to make an argument that I like the map.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. There was a couple of different discussions on related to the map, and basically the recommendation was to add property location information to the map. And so we've done that in your exhibit tonight. I did make that amendment. There's been an additional recommendation to put the name of the park on this map, and so I plan on doing that as well. The reference that I made in the meeting about not having a map is that I don't intend to have this overlay zone map as part of the physical binder that is our land use code. These overlay zones will get applied to these properties. They'll be housed in our, our records. We have 20 or so different types of overlay zones. Your hillside development standards, your, Matthews Inundation Dam, whether you're in Alquist Priel, and so on and so forth. Those don't show up on the map. Those are housed in the property-specific reports, and so we would contain this information in the property-specific report, but use the exhibit in the ordinance that you see here, relatively like what you see here, to identify in perpetuity in our records which specific parcels we were applying this overlay zone to.
I largely agree with Councilmember Ornellis's and Pereira's comments, especially the one about looking at the percentage at the trailer park. I'd definitely like to see if there's some we can be more inclusive in that percentage, I guess. And so yeah, I'm not in favor of leaving the Arcata trailer park in there. I would like to keep that more flexible. And I mean, yeah, my opinion is, I felt like we have been really accommodating, and our staff has worked incredibly hard. I know, we've had a lot of meetings here on this issue, and if we want to keep making changes, keep making additions, we can talk about that, but I don't think it's fair to other applicants, other people who have been waiting on their work and their projects, that we ask them to take a step back in line because we need to move this to the front. So my opinion is, if we really wanted to make these changes, it needs to get back in line. If we are, want to move this forward and then look at making changes down the road, then that's what we should be supporting our staff to do, is to keep the momentum going on it.
Was that clear enough direction?
Should we vote on it? So you can tell the Planning Commission?
Yeah,
It'd be good to have a motion, maybe based on, Susan's outline, to, first prioritize the overlay zone and move that forward, to support the senior overlay zone, specifically looking at Lazy J as a secondary item, to review the 15% of replacement as a secondary item as well, and at this point, to continue to leave the Arcata Trailer Court out of just the overlay zone. Certainly would still be covered in the closure and conversion ordinance.
Okay, so moved.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. And we have old business item C. Consider assigning one additional council member to the Homeless Support Services Working Group. Go ahead.
Mayor and Council, this item was before you actually at your last meeting, and we had a discussion about the Homelessness Services Working Group. We have had 2 members of the council that are full-seated members on that group. And at the last council meeting, we had a discussion, and Councilmember Winkler agreed to step forward to provide support as an alternate, and he came to the meeting today for Paul Patino. But we are still hoping that there might be interest in having a second full member, and I've heard rumor that there might, so we brought this item back before you. Would not necessarily affect Michael Winkler's offer to continue to be an alternate, but there still is a space if somebody else was willing or able to serve as a full member.
So is our dear mayor wanting to serve on this?
Yes,
I had a
if you'll
feeling
allow,
that.
if you'll allow me.
Yes, sure. I'm happy with that. I'll make a motion for the mayor to serve on the homeless task force, the
And
homeless
I'd be
support.
happy to serve as a alternate to the other two full members.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, I'll second.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Seeing none?
When are those meetings?
They meet on the third Wednesday of each month at 1:30, and they usually go till 3 o'clock. We try to do them in an hour and a half.
Same day as the second city council meeting.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, initially that was my concern being on the same day. But yeah, since then, the issues really persisted. We had a lot of conversations about it. And I just decided it was something that I wanted to make room in my schedule for. So, thank you. Next, we have new business. Item A, approve an agreement with Bartle Wells Associates for a wastewater water rate study in the amount of $49,765 and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. May we please have a staff report whenever you're ready?
Almost ready. Okay, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we are recommending that you approve an agreement with Bartle Wells Associates for a wastewater water rate study in the amount of $49,765. Authorize the city manager to execute all the applicable agreements. A little background here. I'm sure you recall this was in the budget this year under the wastewater activity to conduct a rate study as far as doing a thorough analysis of our rates so that we could set the stage for debt service for the large capital project, the wastewater treatment upgrade. We solicited and interviewed 3 consultants, and I failed to list them all, but the other 2 are Walden out of Temecula and NBS out of Davis, California. Temecula, California, and Davis. We really need this study to do a thorough evaluation, comprehensive review of the city's wastewater enterprise funds, historical statements of revenue, expense, current year budgets, customer counts and classes, historical usage data, planned future growth, and any other information deemed important. And the results of the study and the resulting proposed rate structure shall provide the foundation for primarily, but not exclusively, but wastewater rates for the next a 5-year period. So since water and wastewater are combined really in our billing system, and we don't want to leave waste or water behind, the driver here is wastewater, but we're doing both. And of course, this has to meet the Prop 218 requirements. The only reason we didn't put this on consent calendar, because we knew you knew it was budgeted and it was coming, was to mainly highlight the schedule here. And that's why we have this slide up, because it's a fairly compressed time frame. If you do award this contract and we initiate the work, which will highlight some of the steps of the work. The consultant will be
immediately engaging with the finance department and analyzing data and getting ready to set up a public workshop. And it could, or it doesn't have to coincide with your regular council agenda, but we wanted to make sure you could see where we're going in the next few months to make sure that you could understand when we're going to be coming to the public for a workshop and to the council for authorizing hearings on rates. I should say all three consultants were capable, and did a good job in our phone interviews. I think that the two that we're most impressed with was Bartle Wells and NBS in terms of their proposal, their detail, and the fact that they included travel to the community here. Bartle Wells happens to be working for some local CSDs, so they can kind of piggyback on some of that travel. And we were impressed with the references we called cities with similar projects. For example, Placerville, a wastewater treatment upgrade, and they were impressed how they conducted the public hearings. That's a real important part, is that public engagement, of course, in this situation. So really the scope of work, just to highlight it, it's in the attached, in the staff report and the draft agreement. But number one, legal review of the current wastewater and water rate structure, conduct a fee survey of comparable utility agencies, analyze the consumption data, and finance department will, and I'll let Andrea highlight that, is ready on that, and they've been getting everything in order, because that's really the heart and soul, is taking the data that we have, our billing data from Springbrook, so they can do the thorough analysis and audit of it, and leaving no stone unturned to help us figure out the best and most equitable way to do this. We haven't taken this kind of look at our we've looked at rates, of course, but in terms of more holistic approach as to the state of the art and some ideas on how to bill things in a way perhaps we haven't thought of before. Evaluate customer equity, that's a big part. Develop a preliminary and final rate recommendations, and evaluate the rate impacts on the customers. Those are the big 7 steps, and we have to also incorporate long-term financing. We're talking about a 5-year decision here, but it'll have ramifications beyond that in terms of debt service, for example, for loan payback for the state revolving fund, and to look at our operating costs too. It's not just capital that's driving the need here. So I think we're in good shape in terms of where we are. I think the rate increases you approved 5 years ago have stepped us in the right direction. We've, have reasonable reserves. We've had some, with this capital project, some increases you're aware of through our meetings on that. But I'll turn it to the finance director just to also highlight, because we had a great group, including the city manager, city engineer that interviewed these consultants, and I think we've made a good selection to recommend to you.
Good evening. I'd like to just emphasize what Mark was saying as far as the vetting process for the 3 different firms. What stood out to me as far as choosing Bartle Wells over the 2 other firms was the fact that they will have a heavy impact on the financial analysis as far as funding sources go. One of the firms that we did interview didn't seem like they do as thorough of a job when it came to giving us different options beyond the state revolving loan funding. So I would recommend us going with Bartle & Wells as far as what firm we're choosing for our rate study. They seem highly competent, and just reading through their proposal, I believe they stated they are one of the only firms in the state of California that are actually certified with the Security and Exchange Commission as far as being able to recommend different financial tools for us to fund the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Thank you.
Yeah, what we get out of this is a model, and a spreadsheet that allows us to make changes here and there, and kind of live time for you at a workshop to see the ramifications of, what if this and what if that. And so I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for that rather than just a fixed report to limit your options. So.
Thank you.
How will they deal with the fact that the final cost is not known yet, and dealing with that uncertainty in terms of their report, their analysis, and their report?
I think we certainly have a working number at this point from the engineering designs that have been done to date on the project. In addition to that, our staff in the process of the financial piece of this are working up any other capital improvement necessity that we see in a 5-year and in a 10-year increment. And then we'll really have to have some hard conversations internally about, what of that need that we've identified in addition to the really large project can we actually accomplish in that time frame to, in essence, whittle down the best we can the costs that the community will have to fund over that period of time. All of those project costs are going to build in some buffers and some escalation for time. But at this point, you have approved the facilities plan, and we have a draft design, and we've got initial engineering estimates for the project. At $64 million is the number that we'll be using at this point. And then we'll see what that looks like, and then we'll all play with those spreadsheets, and then we'll figure out what the market can bear and what we can do and how. I think the big piece that I was impressed with Bartle Wells was their ability to look at phasing out rates over time, recognizing that our project can have phased costs over time as well. So that's detail that they will force us to get down onto paper and to look at in a real way to review different rate structures.
When I haven't done anything this complex myself, but when I've done similar things, what happens is we end up with an error bar of this is something we can say with a 80% confidence, 95% confidence on the high end and low end of a result.
Yeah, and it was certainly one of the first questions we really, because we were in a tight timeline, we divided up the reference check. So it was certainly a question that I think we all asked was, did you come in on target, right? Is what they recommended, moving you in the direction to be able to fund the projects that you want. But there certainly is a risk factor that we will broker in. To be honest, when we looked back in the last 5 years, we really did come in very close to target, not only on operational costs, but on where we felt like the revenue projections would bring us in terms of reserve capital as well. So I think the majority of it falls to the finance department right now and really looking at our current customer base and the current usage in the city and be able to model accurately, how much water is going to be purchased and therefore how much sewage is being paid for as well.
There's some uncertainty in inflation. There's some uncertainty in usage. So there are a number of things in which there's uncertainty in things that will contribute to costs and either increase them or decrease them.
Yeah, the biggest one for us actually is climate change, to be honest. It actually is rainfall. If we have a lot of rainfall, we have a really reduced amount of water. We don't sell as much, and our revenues are tremendously lower. That's probably the biggest unknown in terms of being able to predict. So we need to look over, a 3 to 5 year period and to be looking at some of those weather trends as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'm prepared to make a motion unless there's public comment.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve an agreement with Barter-Wells Associates for a wastewater water rate study in the amount of $49,765 and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council or submit written communications on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral and written communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council may be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 5 minutes, and a time limit on the overall length of oral communications may be imposed. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment during this time? Seeing none, we will move on to council and staff reports. Do we have any staff reports this evening?
I just wanted to remind the council that we do have our large housing workshop in the community on this coming Monday, September 23rd, from 6 to 8 at the community center. There will be some light refreshments provided. There will also be a play area for kids, so please bring your families. We are really looking to try to attract people that live, that work, that study, that go to school here in Arcata, that are looking for housing, that want to change their housing, or talk about the types of housing that we want to see over the next 20 years. So I encourage the council to attend, and I really encourage the community to come out.
Do we have any main thoroughfares in the city that may be closed in the next day or two, like G Street?
Do I have any major thoroughfares that are going to be closed?
Yeah.
Mitra, do we have any major thoroughfares that are going to be closed in the city the next day or so? Depends on the rain. We had 2 rivers, H and I Street today.
We have lots of rivers today. We got a high intensity rain. I don't think we have any planned closure right now, but however, we have a potential 7 to 8 contractors working on an I&I project. We're trying to finish this before October when the rain comes continuously. So they will be closing lane closure and G Street from 255 coming in. It will not be a road closure. There'll be a lane closure for our I&I project. Those are the only one I'm aware of right now.
So the city of Arcata posted on nextdoor.com that G Street will be closed from Samoa Boulevard to 5th Street, Thursday, September, and Friday from 8 to 6.
Yes, I think that's a part of our I&I project, yes.
Okay.
And then it will be closed for the North Country Fair.
Yeah, definitely. Plaza will be closed, and definitely.
I missed the 5th Street part when I skimmed this.
Yeah.
That is not a big deal. My apologies. All right. Anything else from the staff? No? All right. Do we have any council reports? Do you want to go?
Sure, I'll be brief. We had our first meeting of the Council of Regional Homeless Advisors. A group, a mix of subject matter experts and elected officials from across the state. And going into the first meeting and being the only person representing rural Northern California, I wasn't really sure kind of where the conversation would go, but it was both concerning and reassuring to know that across the state that many of the issues that we see here are happening in other communities. So it's disconcerting in the sense of the magnitude of the problem, obviously, but it's reassuring in the sense of that we're going to have to be looking at regional solutions, but there's a lot of overlap, you know? So San Diego's looking at workforce development concerns, like how do you have the staffing capacity to help provide the homeless services and the behavioral health services in the community? That's something obviously that's very concerning for us here as well. So I'll keep you all posted as they go, but this was really the first meeting, and really as things evolve, I'll definitely make sure to keep you all in the loop. And then had a Humboldt Waste Management Authority meeting. So it's been a topic for some time. Some board members have been very interested in why don't we have a landfill? Why don't we have a landfill in Humboldt County? And that was something that got looked at, and we basically got a report that very conclusively stated it does not pencil out for the capacity that we would have here. It just doesn't make sense for this area. And so now that we've been able to make that very clear that that's not where we should be investing a lot of resources. I did ask that we do the same type of in-depth analysis for composting, and that we have, the Humboldt Waste Management Authority has over 400 acres of property. Most of that's, it's timber property that could potentially have other uses. So that's just something I want to keep you in the loop on. They looked at a landfill, doesn't pencil out, but we are going to be looking at other potential uses, and composting infrastructure is definitely something that's come up a lot in our community. Why don't we have that? So that'll be an analysis that we'll be pushing for. And that's it for me.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's see. I'll start with, I wanted to thank staff, thank Marc-Andre particularly, because I've been talking about Sunnybrae Park and doing some development to some degree of Sunnybrae Park. And staff arranged to have, I don't know what kind of instrument it was, but it came in and sort of chewed up a bunch of the invasive plants that were there. And it's really open now. I mean, it's almost scarily open, to be honest, because it's particularly like with the rain we had today, it's a potential flood, an erosion situation. But I wanted to just invite the whole community, really, to come check out Sunnybrae Park, and where you can see that it's all been kind of ground down and it's really open, and maybe there'll be some straw or something put there to help hold that dirt there. But I just wanted to invite people to come take a look at it, just because I think it's really interesting. I've been trying to promote that we have some kind of a little pocket type of park thing there. I mean, I know we like it all somewhat naturalized, but I see a place that could really serve the community there. There's lots of kids, and just a place for people to sit down and look at the sunset and look at the bay, because it's a really beautiful view there. So just wanted to point that out. And then to cover for Paul, I attended the Sister City project wrap-up after the I Street party. Seemed like there was a few less people there this year, and they made a little bit less money, but it was still positive. And I found out that Camhuapa, Nicaragua, has another sister city in Spain that I'm going to have to tell Paul about, actually, Councilmember Patino, because it's not too far from where he is right now. It's right next to Barcelona. So I think he's in Barcelona, that's where his son is. So anyway, that was interesting. And I attended the chamber mixer at the Plaza Shoe Shop, and that was really positive. Very, very good feeling to that particular mixer. And it was really kind of a nice evening, summertime outside in the back parking lot there. And then tomorrow I will be going to HCOG, and there's just a few things of interest. The HIP program, which is the Highway Infrastructure Program that Nesher was talking about, we will be most likely taking the recommendation of the TAC and moving $841,250 towards the Old Arcata Road. And we're also going to be talking about the Caltrans 101 project, because there's a cost increase there. It just seems to continually have cost increases. But right now, I believe that, we may have a discussion more about that tomorrow, but I believe that Caltrans is saying they will absorb any cost increases at this point, because the community has had a fully funded project a few times and it just keeps moving out. And then just to remind people that this weekend is the North Country Fair, and it's got to be the 44th or 5th or something. So yeah, it's a good time, and I just encourage everybody to come down to the plaza.
I also went to the chamber mixer, and I met a man named Jason, whose last name I don't remember, and then I talked to him further at the HSU block party, which happened the next day. And Jason said that he specializes in recruitment and retention, and he said he's previously dealt with much more difficult situations than the situation with HSU, so he feels like he's going to be able to help resolve those issues in a pretty straightforward manner, and he was very confident about his ability to assist in that process. So that was good to hear. And I've gone to a couple of Main Street meetings that they still have not had the mediation with the North Coast Growers Association, but they plan to. Let's see, and RCA also had a large but by invitation meeting on forestry issues and biomass electricity generation, and that was very positive meetings, both people from the forestry industry and the biomass power plants, and people who oppose or have reservations about biomass electricity generation. And that was, I think, a very positive session. And that is going to then later, that was not a public meeting, that was just by invitation, but further down the line there will be a public meeting that will deal with biomass and forestry issues related to energy. And then today, I sub for Council Member Patino on the Arcata Homeless Services Working Group. And a lot of the focus of the discussion had to do with cooperation between Open Door Mobile Health Services and Arcata House Partnership. And what they were saying is that a lot of the activities have been focused on the annex here near downtown, but they're starting to focus more on Valley West because there seems to be more of a issue with people who are homeless and not being provided services. And so they're starting to put a lot more emphasis on engaging with the people who are homeless or housing insecure in Valley West.
Thank you. I attended a meeting with our city manager, with a board member from Arcata House, and we just had a conversation about the relationship between the city and Arcata House. I also attended the City of Arcata HSU liaison meeting, and the city manager and I are working on putting something together for the council on the topics at that meeting. I attended the 9/11 Patriot Day ceremony put on by the Vets Hall on the plaza. And I met with resident Mary Lou Lowry about work that she could do as a citizen to beautify more areas of the city, and I connected her with our environmental services director, Mark Andre, and he's going to work with her on that. I also met with resident Sharon Farrett about her concerns about parking and homelessness, and I connected with her with the chief on that, and I believe he did meet with her, and they had a very positive meeting. And I attended a welcome reception for President Jackson put on by the General Faculty Association. I volunteered with Eureka Mayor Susan Seaman to work in a booth at the Friday night market in Eureka to support CASA. I spoke to an HSU MBA class about loan products and resources available from the city of Arcata, as well as the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission. And I attended a meeting with the city manager and with the dog park representative. REDEC Loan Committee meeting. I gave a presentation on what's happening in the city to a local Rotaract Club. And last, I met with a new pastor named Alex down the street over here at the Campbell Creek Connection. And he just really wanted to learn about, he's new to the area, and really wanted to learn about how he and their facilities can help the community in any way. He had some interest in working on the homelessness issues. So I know one thing they have there is a parking lot. And that was, the only idea that kind of immediately came to mind was the safe parking concept. And I did give him Arcata House and told him, maybe he could start there with that.
Where is he the pastor?
It's called Campbell Creek Connection. I believe it's the area over here where they sell parking passes to students. If that rings a bell. That might be it.
Yep, that's right on 14th and Union. Mansford Roof Building from the past. Yeah.
Cool.
Totally remember now.
And that is my report. And we wanted to go ahead.
So earlier, when people were making the oral reports, the first round of that, people were asking us about the police foundation, and we never did really reference you and ask. And I had thought in my mind that there was really no update on that, but maybe there is, and I just thought I should ask.
Yeah, I don't have an update, so, they are in regular communication with us, and I know that they made a reference tonight to, being able to produce one on the Pulse, the event at the Pulse nightclub. This is a complicated and very detailed report that they're working on, and they are continuing to go back and, I think, review each and every detail to make sure that things are accurate. So, if I really get a date of when I think that release will happen, I'll certainly share that with the council. But we have shared some dates in the past that they haven't made. So at this point, I'm really just saying it will come. They are in active communication with us to let us know that they're continuing to work on things.
Okay, well, thank you. I just thought maybe that would answer some questions.
And Ian, just to clarify, because I've heard it a couple times, there's no connection with whether or not it's been the city's paid for it or what that has to do with delivery. It's not an issue.
No, it's not. I mean, it's just that they're not going to bill us until they deliver a product. So we have it's in our procurement process. It's there waiting to be paid once the invoice comes in. The product.
Thank you. And the city manager and I wanted to just double check with the council that October 16th, which is our second regularly scheduled council member of October, is a good time for us to agendize the rest of our conversation on revenue generation. I know this evening Councilmember Patino couldn't make it. The first meeting of October, I believe Councilmember Winkler won't be here. So I just wanted to make sure that we did what we could to make sure all the council members were available to be present for that.
Is this then a regularly scheduled council meeting? Yes. Oh, okay, so it's not a special meeting?
No,
just to
I just wanted to
discuss
make sure that we would all be here.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Excellent. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.